Call to order for the Watertown City Council meeting for May 16th, 2022. We'll rise and listen to a prayer from Adam Ramirez from Hope for Life Church. And Adam, if you could just come up to the microphone there and press the green button.
It's good to share a few moments with men and women who are interested in the well-being of the city that they live in. As a faith community leader, I'm honored to have moved to Watertown and start a new season of my life and ministry here. And I'd be more than eager to learn as I get to know more and more of you, what our faith communities can do to come alongside the folks in this great town. Let us have a word of prayer for the well-being of our city, the country, and each one of us as individuals. We give you thanks, Father, because as Christians, as followers of Jesus, we can call you Father. Those of us, Lord, who confess you as the giver of life, also confess you, Lord, to be the giver of justice, to be the giver of every good and perfect gift that we have. Lord, your word tells us that you show us the path to life, and that in your presence there is fullness of joy. Lord, thank you for the liberty and freedom of worshiping you and of being able to express our trust in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Many generations later, we can attest to your faithfulness. Lord, you are a God of justice. You are a God who cares and is compassionate about everything that exists, Lord. We pray a blessing over those who work in law enforcement, Lord, especially the police officers, anyone who puts their life on the line to promote the safety of our well-being as individuals and the well-being of our families, wherever they are, Lord. We believe that there are many things at hand in our world that are not right, Lord, but in your time, you will equip us as sons and daughters of the Most High to shine as a beacon of light in the middle of darkness. Lord, please equip each one of us to defend life in all its forms, Lord, to defend and stand up for the needy. Lord, we pray that you may make us women and men of valor, good citizens who are there to procure common good, who are there to procure living as faithful disciples of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, until peace and justice kiss each other, as your word says in Psalm 85. Lord, we pray for blessing over a broken world that needs Jesus, that needs to know that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And those of us who are people of faith, those of us who believe in you, Jesus, want to carry out your mission as faithfully as we can here in Watertown, South Dakota. We pray confidently that your kingdom come and that your will be done. In your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Bueller? Here. Danforth? Here. Helene?
Here.
Paulson? Here. Shetty?
Here.
Tepper?
Here.
Vilhauer?
Here.
Thank you.
Quorum established. The chair will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Bueller. Any conversation on that? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Now is the time for public comments. If anyone is here to speak to the council about something that is not on the agenda tonight, you have a short time now to do so. Just please come forward, make sure the green light is on, and introduce yourself.
I'm here on behalf of there's a thing going around about the smoking in these casinos and bars and stuff. I just have a question, why is there even discussion? Because it's against the law. So why is it even being discussed?
I will say that is actually on the agenda tonight.
Oh, I don't have an agenda.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the smoking ordinance is on the agenda tonight.
I didn't see it, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's all right. It's all right. You also said that you had a road
Yes,
issue?
I have had this issue for about 4 years. I've been kind of arguing or fighting with you guys out by Evolution and she and Trailers, whatever it is. And I'm just kind of wondering where things are going.
I'm actually somewhat aware of the road. Is there anyone on the council? This is public comment, so we don't have to engage, but I do feel like if there is information, we could give it to you if there is anything new on the agenda or anything new on that road. Heath, did you want to, is there, if there isn't, that's fine.
Mr. Mayor,
Our Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye.
Yes, thank you. The newest information that I have is we've been in recent discussions with the adjacent property owners, particularly on the west side of that street. The status of that road being built really hasn't changed as far as short of there being a formal city assessment to build it ourselves and assess those property owners back those costs. The determining factor when that road gets built is development driven. And that's how we've been treating that situation. But we have been in recent conversations with the adjacent property owners that have potential to further develop their land, which would trigger the necessity for that road to be built. And that information has been conveyed to the property owners.
Thank you. And in regard to the smoking question that you had, the reason why we are tackling it is while there is a law in the state books, it's lacking clarity and enforcement. And therefore, it falls to the localities to come up with their own ordinance as far as what works here, because there is no straight up statewide standard to enforce it. And anyway, there's lots of questions about that, and that's what we're just trying to figure out.
Okay.
So.
Well, I can say it's just, again, if we want to follow the law, it's just no smoking. That way you can avoid all the hassle and everything of fines and stuff.
Mm-hmm. So.
That's what it is. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda, but with one slight change. We are going to move item M, that's the Derby Downs facility, to right after item F. We're moving item M to right after item F. And that's just to accommodate some people here to testify on that. With that, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Made by Councilman Vilhauer, seconded by Councilman Shetty. Any conversation on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. And Councilman Paulson has said that he is going to recuse himself from item O. Okay. With that, all those in favor of the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item A is a retail on-off malt beverage and South Dakota farm wine license renewal for 4 Amigos doing business as Cowboy Country Store. We will go to our finance officer, Kristen Bobzien, for more information.
Thank you, Mayor. Before the council is a renewal for malt beverage South Dakota farm wine for Cowboy Country Store number 3. This one, as a renewal, is in front of the council because it did receive a violation. That violation was serving to a minor. A letter was sent to the owner. Other than that, I don't have anything, but if the council has questions of the owner, thank you.
All right, thank you. Chair will entertain or now open it up for public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to testify on item A? I think it is appropriate if you want to come forward. I know that the council will have a question as far as what happened. And just please identify yourself and just for everyone watching.
Okay, my name's Adam Spies. I'm with the Cowboy Country Stores. We're a third-generation family business here in Watertown. This violation happened in October. I was actually here a couple of months ago talking about the same violation. There has not been two violations. This is the same one. I was here for the liquor license renewal, and now I'm here for the beer license renewal. If you want me to go through it, there's no difference or there's no change in any of the information. We had an employee that was trained in alcohol management, as all of our employees are. It didn't ask for an ID, sold to an underage person, was ticketed, was fined, and learned a lesson. It was just a human error. Every one of our employees goes through an alcohol management training. They take an exam. They have to complete that and pass that. That demonstrates that they know the law. They know the consequences of not complying with it. And they have to do that before they can work for us, and that's how we handle those things. We take it seriously, and if there's any questions about it, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Spies. If you would stand by just in case there's any questions from the council, but we do remember the last time you were here, and we thank you for coming back.
Sure.
Councilman Tupper?
Adam, just a quick question. I know you guys are on a pretty tight ship. I mean, and we all deal with human error every now and then. Since then, what has been done differently? I mean, is this employee still employed? Have they had to go through the training again?
No, yes, he's still employed. Since then, there have been, as I said, no other violations.
Yep.
But yes, still employed, and we have every confidence in this person, and he's a good guy. And
Well, like I say, we all deal with
he
human error.
apologized for it. He felt terrible about it.
Yep.
And yeah, that was that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you. I should ask, is there anyone else here to testify on this item? Seeing none. Now, council, any further questions? Councilman Danforth?
Yeah, I'd just like to make just a statement. And Adam, I appreciate you being here and the efforts that you guys have put into it. And I do remember that, the meeting last fall when we'd asked you to come then and go. So I do appreciate that. But I think a lot of the comments that Adam made are going to be questions that we're going to have of any one of these, in my opinion, that come up here tonight. Just so if you're here representing any of those businesses, we'd like to know, just so your own preparedness, what have you done about it? We want to understand that. So I do appreciate it, Adam, and that's so we don't have to ask the same questions every time. That'd be great.
I think that's a good idea. So anyone who is here to testify on one of the liquor or beer renewals, you might as well just, tell us what happened and what was done to rectify it, and just be proactive, because it'll just save a question. So is there any other questions from the council? Hearing none, the motion is to, we do need a motion, sorry. Chair will entertain a motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Paulson. Any further comment on this, council? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the license. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item B is a retail malt beverage South Dakota Farm Wine license renewal for BMG Incorporated, doing business as Ringo'S. We'll go to our finance officer, Kristen Bobzine.
Thank you, Mayor. The application in front of you for Ringo'S was actually an after-hours sale violation. A letter was also sent to that business owner to be present at tonight's meeting. If there's anything else, I can try to help.
Thank you very much. I will open up a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to testify on this item? Is there anyone from Ringo'S here to testify? Anyone else who would like to testify on this issue? Hearing none, the chair will close the public hearing and open it up for council action. Keep in mind, knowing our policy, this does not have to be renewed tonight.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that this gets tabled
Did you have a question?
I was just going to ask for clarification. Were they here this fall as well?
Yep. Okay, so were they, well, it's still up for council, it's still up for council interpretation.
The letter went out. I mean, she sent us a copy of the letter, and in all due respect for everybody else that's sitting here, I think it's only fair that we table it as of this evening and give them one more chance to come in front of us. So even though it is a violation that we've dealt with, like I say, all fairness, I think somebody needs to be here, so.
Chair is going to ask Councilman Tupper if it would be all right to change your motion from tabling motion, which is usually a temporary action done at the same meeting, to a postpone to a date certain, which would be the next council meeting.
I would change that motion to bring it up at the next council meeting,
Okay.
so, which is the date of June 6th.
So June 6th, and then tabling is also not a debatable motion. This, however, is. So if we've got a second, we can at least talk about it if we need to. So motion to postpone to June 6th meeting made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Schutte. Is there any conversation on this? Councilman Danforth.
I think procedurally, we need to take a look at what we're dealing with right now, because we have multiple licenses with the same infraction. It's not like we're seeing multiple infractions. I think our requirement should have the owner or the representative of that business be here one time. They shouldn't be here 2 times, 3 times, whatever it is, based on their licenses. If they're here and before us at any point in time, then somewhere procedurally we could send them a letter but not have that same requirement. They've already been here. They're going to tell us the same story they did 6 months ago. And so I think procedurally is really the cause of where we're at with some of these anyway tonight. So just what that does for us tonight is up to everybody here. But I think it's wrong to have somebody come here and say, you know, be put in front of this again when they've already done it for the same incident.
Councilman Villauer.
I guess I would, not disagreeing with you necessarily, Councilman, but in defense of our staff, and the letter very clearly stated that they were to appear tonight. Whether we change our policy going forward, another story, but very clearly stated that they were to be here tonight.
Finance Officer Bobzine.
I would just like to give some clarification too. That was the procedure a couple years back where they only had to be present for one. Then there was confusion on who was present for which alcohol license. Then we have change of council sometimes where these cross years. Liquor is renewed in December. Malt beverage is renewed in July. So sometimes we're crossing council members. So we were only requiring them to show up for one license renewal, but then it became very confusing for council and staff to know which we were doing. So I was just following the direction that I received at the last one, where going forward, any violation and a renewal within that time period of that license is brought before council. And if we want to change it, I'm fine with that going back, but I just try to not get confused.
Councilman Schutte.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I agree with Ms. Bobzine. That was my concern, was as good points here, but yeah, not knowing if they were here the last time or not, you know, just a confusion that would clarify it. So that's kind of what I was thinking in that same line.
Councilman Tupper.
Just, you know, to clarify that, and I agree somewhat with Councilman Danforth, but we're also talking about 2 licenses. There was 1 violation against both licenses, so once they come up for renewal, they should have to come up and to make it all fair for everybody. So,
Any further comments from the council? Seeing none, the motion is to postpone this until June 6th. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item C is a malt beverage and South Dakota farm wine license renewal for Brecht Enterprises doing business as Duffy's. We'll go to our Finance Officer, Kristen Bobzine.
Thank you, Mayor. This is also a renewal that had a violation. This would be for Duffy's Bar. It was serving to a minor violation. If there's any other questions, I can try to answer them.
Chair will open it up for a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to testify on this item?
Hi, I'm Mike Brock. I own Duffy's Bar. It's been in the family business. We've been in Watertown, same locations for 62 years. And the bartender in question that served the minor has worked as a bartender for 45 years, 35 years for our family alone, and this is the first violation he's ever had. Okay? Can I show you this thing? Okay, you can pass it around.
Is that something? I'll grab it.
Where at?
Yep,
Right here?
Yep, right in front of you.
Okay. These are the fake IDs. This is one frame that my bartenders have found. And it's, they're very hard to tell. And I got a bartender that can spot them without going through watercress or anything like that. They're readily made on the internet, so these kids can get them. They can get 6 of them at a time. So we can find them, and we can take them away from them. But they're just going to go to the next place and pull out another one. So this is, the things that we have to go through diligently to protect ourselves, right? We've also got ultraviolet lights for the watermarks on the new driver's license. Plus, the state of Missouri has an app. It's from the Department of their DOT. And it's a scanner that you can scan the back of a driver's license. It doesn't work on all of them. South Dakota doesn't have anything like this. They can tell you if the ID is fake or not. So all my bartenders have these downloaded on their phones, and they've got all the rest of the access. And they do an amazing job of finding these IDs. So it's not like we're trying to make a living off of serving minors in the bar. Because we've been here 62 years, we don't need the minors' business. And we try our best to keep them out.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing, open it up for council action, proper procedure before we ask questions. So,
I'll make a motion.
Motion to renew made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Vilhauer. Now we can ask questions. Councilman Tupper.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
I've known you for a lot of years, put it that way. And yes, you guys have run a very reputable business for many years. And it is tough to keep up with the fake IDs nowadays. You can get them any place. And I appreciate everything that you guys do, and I appreciate you being here. The case in point was that person did not have a fake ID.
Exactly.
Yep.
But I mean, it is very tough, and I mean, they're very diligent, and it's going to slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not perfect, and it's hard. These kids, as you get older, it's very hard to tell how old they are, especially the girls.
Yeah. I used to compete against Mr. Brock years ago in the business, and it's a lot different nowadays than what it was back then, because there was no things as fake IDs back then. Well, they were, but they were pretty noticeable. So I appreciate everything you do to try to keep it intact. So,
Councilman Danforth.
Mike, with the individual, what I mean, let's be honest, being busy is not an excuse for a scenario.
Correct.
I know it's not perfect.
Correct.
But our police have their job to do, and we have our jobs to do, and you've got your job to do. But so with the individual that was there, this incurred with them, what took place in that? Is it just chalk it up to?
What happened that night, Roger's worked there for me for 35 years. He works every weekend. He only misses maybe once a year. And, a lot of these kids are regulars, so he knows a lot of them by face. And when you get really busy, a lot of times you look up and you think you see somebody that orders something that and you know that he's old enough, but you're mistaken and you got the wrong person. And that's what happened to Roger. And Roger thought that the person that he served was somebody else. And so in fact, Roger wanted to see the person when he went to pay his fine and went to court on it. But they wouldn't produce the person for him to see. But Roger swore that it was a person that he thought he knew. And that's how it happened. Because, I mean, these kids, a lot of them, the majority of them, you see every weekend, And so you get a pretty good idea who your clientele is and who they are. But it's not perfect. It's hard. It's hard to keep them all separate. It's hard to keep, the minors out. You got, when you're busy and you're full, and you got maybe somebody that comes up and buys it for a minor, and they might have them by the back door that you can't see at the time, and giving it to them that way. So there's many different ways of doing this, and as long as they're going to send around people, minors, to check, every now and then somebody's going to get caught. It's just the way it is.
Councilman Shetty.
Well, yeah, one thing I would look for, even in my own life, if I have a little bit of where it kind of concerns me if I let something like that happen. It sounds like with this gentleman, I know who you're talking about as well, that he was concerned about it. It appears by what you're testifying on, and he doesn't want to see that happen again. So.
No, never again. Right. And it's not, it's not something that, any of my bartenders are trying to do or need to do or want to do to serve a minor, And they all are, if they think they are to card. But a lot of times there's a lot of them that you've carded over and over and you know who they are. So you don't have to recard them again. But if you get some of these kids start looking a lot alike, and so one might slip through the cracks. So, but we try. We do.
Any further comments? I almost should joke with you, Mr. Brock, that I should recuse myself because, as you know, 2 weeks from now, 29 years ago, was my wife and my first date at Duffy's.
Exactly. Yes, I know that.
So, but I will not recuse myself. Councilman Tupper.
Just, if I come into Duffy's next week, will Roger card me?
Well.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Is that it? Thank you.
Item D is a retail malt beverage South Dakota farm wine license renewal for Lake Stop 20, doing business as Lake Stop 20. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please enlighten us.
Thank you, Mayor. This is also a renewal with a violation. Lake Stop 20 did receive a violation for serving to a minor. If there's any other questions, I can try to answer them.
Thank you very much. Chair will open up public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to testify on this item?
Hello, my name is Marty Van Hill, and I'm one of the owners out there. This happened to one of our very good employees. She's been with us for 7 years. And the minute it happened, she called me right away. Says she misread the driver's license, and she felt terrible. But I got the phone call just after it all happened. And what we've done since then, we've got all our employees together, got them together and sat down and talked about, South Dakota driver's license, underage is one way, the different ways. We do have a calendar up on the wall that says, as of this date, it matches. So, and then we bought all our scanners are now scan driver's license. So we can scan everybody's driver's license that for tobacco and alcohol, and we tell them all now that you card everybody. If they say they know me, I don't believe it, but they come in and say, I know Marty, you let me know. No, I said, don't do that. But so now they got the availabilities on the scanners to scan all driver's license and make sure they're all of age and stuff. So.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else here who would like to testify on this item? Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public hearing, open it up for council action. Is there a motion to approve the license? Made by Councilman Danforth, seconded by Councilman Paulson. Questions or comments, council? I will close the hearing and ask all those in favor for the renewal, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank
you very much.
Item E is a retail malt beverage and South Dakota farm wine license renewal for the Guest House, doing business as the Guest House. Finance Officer Bob Zine, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. This is, both of these E and F are both the Guest House. They have 2 inactive licenses at the time. Both of them have video lottery tied to them, so I'll just cover both of these violations were for serving to a minor as well. So if there's any questions, I can try to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will open it up for a public hearing. Is there someone who would like to testify? I see there is.
I'm Terry Walford, owner of the Guest House, or one of the owners. I was actually the one that served it. I jumped behind the bar to try to help out because we were getting slammed. I have no excuse for it. what we've done, I guess we shut her down and we're trying to sell her. We've got some people interested in it and they want the licenses, so that's what we've done so far. It isn't easy. I did it 40 years ago, but I'm getting too old to do that kind of thing.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this item? I'll close the public hearing, open it up for council action. Is there a motion to renew the license? Made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Shetty. Now, this is just on item E. We are not doing both of them right now. So this is just on the malt beverage farm wine. So, any comments, council? Questions? Motion is to approve the license renewal. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item F, we'll just move on. We've already had a public hearing on the same violation, so I will just ask if there's any questions or comments from the council on this one. Councilman Villauer.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I'm confused. What is the difference between what we just approved and this one?
These are two licenses. So there's two licenses, both malt beverage, both have video lottery. So they're separate licenses.
Okay.
So, yep.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Motion is to approve. All those in favor? Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I did that. Item F already. Okay. Made by Councilman Shetty, seconded by Councilman Tupper. Now, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Now we are on to item M. An approval of the Derby Downs Facility Updates Agreement with Mackenzie Blaze. For more information, we'll go to our city manager, Amanda Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. What you have before you is an agreement between the city and Mackenzie Blaze. Mr. Blaze approached the Park Rec and Forestry Board on April 26th to request permission to make certain improvements to the Derby Downs facility to facilitate a professional rodeo this summer. The board voted, I believe it was 5-1, to allow Mr. Blaze to make these improvements with the caveat that an agreement needed to be put into place between the city and him to ensure that all of the updates that he's wanting to do are completed at no cost to the city. I believe that he has been working with you, Mr. Mayor, and a lot of the user groups who utilize the Derby Downs facility for youth activities related to rodeo to come to an agreement on what these improvements will look like and the timing of them. And with that, I will stand by for any questions.
Thank you very much. I don't need to, but the chair would like to open it up for a public hearing because I know that we have several people who are very concerned about this item who would like to testify in front of the council. So I will ask for proponent history or proponent testimony. So Mackenzie, if you would like to come forward and address the council. Yeah, just make sure that the microphone is on and identify yourself.
Green. Mackenzie Blaze. My wife Kelsey and I looking to bring a pro rodeo to Watertown this summer, and in order to do so what we believe properly, we do want to make some changes and updates to Derby Downs, and bottom line, just move the main arena hillside to utilize the natural hill out there for seating for fans and spectators.
Thank you very much. I'll continue the public hearing. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this item? Todd, I know we'd like to hear from you, so. And just identify who you're working with as well. Thank you.
Todd Bach. I'm with the high school and the 4-H, and we've been out there quite a few years. And Mac proposed some changes that we had a kind of a conflict with at first, but Mac and I sat down and had an agreement, and I think we've come to a pretty good one now that is, I mean, it'll work for all of us. So I think we'll be in good shape now.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep.
Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this item? Anyone? No? Okay. before closing the public hearing, I would just like to say this was not easy, but I want to commend everyone who was involved in this for caring more about the participants and the rodeo and the region and working together to come up with a compromise. It is really, I really want to commend you on a job well done. Thank you so much for coming together and doing a better job than what we would have had we been forced to make a decision. So I want to thank you very much. I will open it up for a council action to approve the agreement made by Councilman Paulson, second by Councilman Tupper. Any questions or comments on this, Council? Councilman Tupper.
I do have a comment on this. When I was on the council before, I'm going to say back probably about 6, maybe 7, or yeah, about 6 years ago, we looked at a large improvement at Derby Downs and worked with, I was on that committee and worked with a lot of the people that are in the audience today. I am just so very happy the hard work and dedication that they put in, because I think with the city kind of let them down, put it that way. Unfortunately, just at that time with the funding of it, there wasn't any funding available for it. So my hat's off to everybody that in your guys' group that's worked very hard for this, because it's well overdue. It's kind of something that just gets forgotten about that's out there, and I'm excited to see everything you guys do. So thank you very much.
Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to commend everyone for coming together before it came to us and reaching an agreement. I know there was some people that reached out in regards to this, and thanks for your guys' hard work in putting this together. This is something that's going to promote Watertown, and we already have grounds available, so why not utilize it while we can.
Councilman Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a farm boy, but I got to admit I know absolutely nothing about rodeo. But I got to tell you what, I'm excited. I understand there's some plans for improvement of the clubhouse out there, and possibly even a new one at some point down the road. Is that a fair statement from what I see from your plans?
Yeah, so long-term goal is to just continue reinvesting in the rodeo grounds. If you all have the phased-in plan there, yeah, before 5 years is up, we hope to put up a new clubhouse with showers and better restroom facilities, better concession facilities, possibly better box seats for VIPs and things like that. And then also, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And then also putting in some of these RV outlets for contestants to use free of charge. You know, hot days of summer, it can get pretty rough out there sleeping in a camper, a horse trailer. So just trying to create some amenities for these people.
No, I appreciate hearing that, because I've been in that clubhouse a number of times over the years, and I know last summer in particular we had a number of complaints. In fact, I think on one case we actually ended up refunding the fee that we charged, because it was just not what it should have been for the user for that particular event. So I'm excited to hear about that, and look forward to the improvements that we're going to see out there. I do have one question. Driving through yesterday, I'm assuming that road all the way through is pretty rough, especially the north entrance and the gravel road right by the clubhouse. I assume that's going to be fixed up or smoothed out to some extent and filled in where needed.
Yeah, that's step one. I've already got a couple contractors waiting for the go-ahead to come through and smooth that out and bring in some gravel to level it off.
Okay, outstanding. Thank you so much.
Councilman Danforth.
The whole notion of it, I really like the idea. Bruce had actually shared that this was coming a few weeks ago with me, and I'm very positive with it, and my questions are all really related to the agreement and how it relates to the city. So, Mayor, if you can kind of bear with me for a second. But so does the first question I had was any concerns from any of the other user groups, and I think that got answered here. It was mentioned that you came to an understanding or agreement as to what it would be. Does the current plan that we've got in front of us then reflect that agreement? That understanding between parties?
City Attorney Roby has been working a lot on this as well, so I'll give
You're right.
leeway to you.
No, so I don't think so. I think that there was an email that came through today. So this was the information I had when we published the agenda last week. The information that came through today updated the timeline a little bit, and I think we can pull that up if you'd like to look at the latest information. I wasn't sure if you'd said that was already distributed to the council or not. Was that distributed in some way? Oh, okay.
The information I have was whatever was in the packet.
So the timeline that you have in the packet then is, that actually has more in it than what we are going to do year one. So year one, if we can pull up that first picture that was just up there. Yeah. So year one, what we've agreed to do is take out this center alleyway, which currently is a return alley for timed event steers. And that is what separates the main arena from the small arena. And the small arena, which is closest to the clubhouse, is on the hillside. What we've agreed to do is take that out for the pro rodeo, and then we'll be bringing in portable bucking chutes and an additional arena panel fence and move the bucking chutes closer to the fans on the hillside. And then after the pro rodeo, the portable chutes and panels will be removed, and then we'll actually be putting the alleyway back in using rough stock arena panels made by Max Steel. So that way the alleyway will be there for the other user groups when they need it for their rodeos. And I do believe that's a good long-term plan as well, not something that just needs to be year one.
Well, the question I have is, if I look at the long-term plan, is what we're agreeing to tonight assume that that's probably going to happen? Matt? Because it's a 5-year agreement with additional years potentially beyond that.
Yes.
So we should assume this phasing in is going to occur, which there are some permanent changes that would take place here, correct? And additions.
Yes, I mean this is it's a little bit of a unique agreement because really he's voluntarily improving a city amenity without compensation, and so if there is the ability in the agreement for us to hold him accountable if he were to walk away in the midst of something that leaves it unusable, but if he walks away in year 4 and the facility is still usable, we're not out or anything. We haven't paid for this. It's all gratis improvements to our facility.
So each phase, when the detail comes out, do we approve each phase, the detail, and exactly what's going to occur? If we wouldn't, why we should. Because it is our property, and it will be our property as soon as something is done to it, and so we should be approving each phase as it comes along, so that we know that what is there is something that is acceptable to us and that we can live with. We don't want to create any liability issues that let me ask that different. Instead of a statement, I'll ask a question. If we aren't involved with approving the various phases, and again, this is really contractual understanding, and the idea, I really like the idea. So, but if something's done without our direct approval of what it is, and it creates a liability on that property, who's responsible? Mackenzie or us?
It depends. That's the law school answer. I mean, it really does depend. I mean, it depends on the situation. It depends on if it was something that we could have done differently. It depends on if something he did negligently. I can't answer that.
Okay. The new clubhouse falls down on people, collapses. Who's responsible? City?
It is, yes, it's our, I mean, at the end of the day, something like that, yes, that is our responsibility.
Okay, so that's my point, is I think we have to have a level of, right, and it's not noted in here, and that's the part that concerns me, is it's still, no matter what happens, is our property. So we have to be responsible for that property from every aspect.
I don't disagree. I will say that I was not involved in these discussions until the very end. I was given a directive to draft an agreement based on discussions I wasn't a part of. And so I would defer to the folks that were in those discussions to answer these questions, to be honest with you. If Terry Kelly is on the line, he could perhaps weigh in on that, but I was not involved in the discussions of the substance and the phasing, and et cetera, et cetera. I just attached the exhibit to the agreement.
And I guess the way I understood the agreement was this was a draft, and this approval or not approval would be to enter those contract negotiations, which at that point would be worked out amongst lawyers and the exact verbiage and everything. But if needed to put in a statement of year over year or define different phases, that's not an issue with us, I guess.
Okay, and Mackenzie, I appreciate that comment, because that's, what are we actually approving then? Just the concept?
Yes, so we're saying go ahead and do what you're going to do. Don't hold us liable. Don't ask us for a check. That's essentially what we're doing. That's what I was directed to do.
Okay. All right, I will, Mayor, I'll forward some of my questions for if there is going to be a contract beyond this that at least should be considered. I'll forward those to you and Amanda. Okay?
Councilman Villauer.
I guess to address Councilman Danforth's concern, isn't number 7, the indemnification paragraph, hold us harmless for issues that may arise from something that happens out there?
Only if only if they're responsible for it. It's still our facility. So if somebody goes out there and does something tomorrow, he's not leasing our facility. He's just doing stuff to it. So if somebody goes out there and does something tomorrow and injures themselves, and we're found to be negligent, then we would be responsible just like we would today.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Tupper.
So all the improvements that they're going to do still have to go through our building services, correct? So, I mean, there's a line of, how do I want to say it, a line of protection there. And I don't know if anybody really knows what the history is of that clubhouse, but at one time, I believe that clubhouse probably been there 35, 40 years, and it was retired as the municipal golf course clubhouse. So put a thought on how old that thing is. And when we were looking at it 5, 6 years ago, whatever it was, there was some safety issues that were concerns. So I'll be more than happy to see that old clubhouse go away and something new built. So,
Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. So is this not pretty much them renting the facility, but in lieu of taking rent as a payment as rent, he's improving the grounds? So that would be no different than renting a facility, a city-owned facility in any capacity, other than he's making improvements.
Again, I was advised by the park department that they do not want to lease the facility to this group to control the facility. So if we lease the facility, then they would have control over the user group, the sublessees. And I was advised that that was not the desire of the park department.
Correct, but I'm saying pretty much he's renting the facility for per use, but instead of taking a payment. No, not at all.
Not renting the facility.
So he's using the facility.
He's going to rent the facility for the rodeo, just like we let other user groups rent the facility through a separate process.
Okay.
This is merely a written acknowledgement of this. Yeah, go ahead and improve our facility. Just don't hold us liable. You're gonna indemnify us if you do something that causes harm to somebody else or their property, and you're not going to ask us for payment. And we're going to come after you if you quit in the middle of an improvement. That's the three things that this agreement does.
I see our Park and Rec Director, Terry Kelly, is online. TK, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. If I may, again, Terry Kelly, Park and Rec. To Councilman Danforth, as you were mentioning those things, Mike, a few things came to my mind. Let's use like the Lions Shelter, as a prime example of a nonprofit or an organization outside the city that constructed that, from the footprint up, then gifted that to the city. And I believe it was Councilman Tupper commenting, that was all vetted then through building services to make sure everything was done, and we did not accept that. It was actually inspected by our insurance pool, South Dakota Insurance Alliance. So those things are done. And the other thing I wanted to jump in was, it's an interesting process because the park board has the ability to accept proposed changes to public park property or land, but they can't do the contractual agreement. So I agree regardless, phase 2, phase 3, even if that's a conversation with all the user groups to say, yeah, here's phase 2, we're all in agreement. I think that's important, not to umbrella an agreement like you're saying, but those steps is something I would see us doing with Mac and the rest of the group, saying, okay, this is done, we all agreed, here's my next phase, what do you think? Whether that's listened to by the park board and ratified by the council through the agreement, it doesn't really matter to me, but I agree with you, Councilman, that should be a process so there's no surprises moving forward. So that's what I had, Mayor. Appreciate the time.
City Manager Mack.
If I may, Mayor, Councilman Danforth, I need some clarification on what you're asking. So in the rodeo grounds updates, and I have forwarded the email to all of you, so when you get a chance, you can look at it. So there's a couple of different terminologies that are used. So there's phase 1, which is May 18th to June 4th, phase 2, June 13th to July 4th, phase 3, July 11th to August 4th. And then there's tentative future updates. So there's year 2 to 3, year 3 to 5. When you say that you want to approve each phase, are you talking about phase 1, 2, 3, or are you talking about year 1, year 2, year 3?
When I say we, I'm talking about at some level of the city. And whether that be engineering, whether that be whoever, that anything that gets done out there, a more detailed plan should be proposed to us as to what's going to happen. And if it's temporary, that's a whole separate issue. But if it's something that is a change or is a permanent change out there, a detailed plan, whether it's in phase 1, 2, 3, or 5, it doesn't matter, should be proposed and presented to someone within the city to say, we agree with this because it is our property, and that we understand what's going to be done, and we understand, we do have an obligation to make sure that there are funds available by Mackenzie to start and finish a project. So because it is our property, it's significantly different than if he's just out doing this on his own and it's on his property. We're going to live with the results when it's all said and done. And it's a really good thing. And again, I'm excited for it. I think unfortunately, it's long overdue out there, and it's great to see that. But the devil's in the detail in regards to how these things work sometimes. And if we don't put our attention to the detail of the formation of this and how it's going to work, we don't do that now, which that's what I thought we were doing. I didn't understand this was a kind of a draft blessing on it. Then you got to put your time into it up front here. So we need to know that what gets presented in enough detail that A, we're accepting of what it is that's going to get done and how it's going to get done.
Councilman Schutte.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and thank you, Mike, or Councilman Danforth. Looking at as I'm looking the sheet over again here, we've got phase 1, and then we've got phase 2, phase 3 for this year. It looks like the year 2 to 3 and 3 to 5 says tentative future updates, right? So I guess the way I'm looking at it is we're approving phase 1 for this year, and then we can revisit phase 2, phase 3, like Mr. Kelly was saying, revisit the next phases as they come about. I guess just making sure I'm seeing it clearly on my end here.
Councilman Bueller.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Blaze, I know that you had some appetite. We had discussions amongst our groups, and at the Park and Rec Board, I need a little clarification from Director Kelly. You were considering the possibility of a lease down the road to lease that property. And I think we ought to keep an open mind that may be an option for us down the road. I think that's something we need to consider. And that would cover a lot of these agreement issues, I think, moving forward. But Attorney Roby, I think you had mentioned that, I thought I heard you say that the Park and Rec Board said that we were not going to authorize or allow a lease of that property. I don't recall that at the Park and Rec Board meeting that we said that. Director Kelly, do you recall that conversation?
Mayor, may I?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the lease, McKenzie brought up that one of his long-term vision was to enter into a leased agreement such as we have with Thunder Road. At that time, there was off-the-record comments that, let's take a look at these improvements before we get into that conversation. At this time, it wasn't brought up for formal discussion. So the informal talks, there was really no intent to pursue, but I think you're right, Councilman, that down the road, not saying we can't hold those conversations, but no formal ask was done by MAC, nor did the board, pursue that conversation. So,
but we did not deny that. I don't recall us saying that he could not do that.
No, there was no, no, don't even come back. Not at all. There's an open dialogue if that conversation is ever held.
Great, thanks.
And
thanks.
I referred to City Attorney Roby. At this point, I'm looking for an agreement just on the improvements. At point, the board was not interested in having him do a lease action at this point. So that may have been where I threw Mr. Roby off a little bit. So
Thanks, Terry.
Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate Councilman Danforth's sentiment to protect the city. I think it's warranted. But instead of it coming back to the council, I think that the city manager and the park board should be the ones involved. I think we're approving a lease, right, or not a lease, but this agreement tonight with Mackenzie Blaze, and I think as far as us, why are we concerned over what happens out there beyond this? It should be with the park board. And I think any agreement, therefore, should be with the park board and the manager.
I think I could answer that, but I'm going to defer to my colleague, Councilman Bueller, who is the Park and Rec expert liaison down at Council.
I would never say expert, but I will say that in that regard, Councilman Paulson, I think moving forward, anytime we have an agreement, anytime we have a contract, I believe it's the duty of the council to approve that. If it's use, then the Park and Rec Board, I believe, can approve the use applications for our park facilities. So when that comes up, then it's I think it's required that it come through us. So,
Councilman Danforth.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. I did not say it had to come back to the council. I said the city, somewhere along the line, should be throwing some holy water on it, saying we agree with it. So that's what I was referring to, is approval of the plan in a more detailed level than what we have on here, both verbally and in the little picture that's, the plan that outlaid that really doesn't tell us a lot, right? And that's, I'm good with where it's at. I'm just saying, make sure we dot our I's, cross our T's with the detail so that we don't get something in the end somewhere along the line that we don't want or creates a liability for us that is unbeknownst to us. That's where this all goes.
Councilman Paulson.
Just to clarify too, I'm not saying that no one should look. I guess I don't know, but I'm just saying, per the phasing plans, since we're agreeing to a 5-year term here, I think that we're already agreeing to these improvements. So I don't think we need to see. And I agree. You weren't saying that, Councilman, but. We don't need to see that personally. I feel that we're agreeing to this 5-year agreement. The improvements should be approved through the park board.
Councilman Tupper.
I would kind of echo that. At some point in place, I think this is a good agreement, and I think we need to allow our staff to do what they're supposed to do. That's what they're there, is to protect the citizens of Watertown and also protect the council. To say any other major changes is this agreement, I would expect that Public Works would bring it back to the council for approval. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure they would, or Director Kelly, but I have all the confidence in the world that our staff can handle this, and it shouldn't have to come back to the council. But due respect for Councilman Danforth's comment, because that's exactly what he's doing, is looking out for the liability of the communities. So,
Councilman Bueller?
Just a couple comments. First off, this was pretty contentious to begin with, and I'm really impressed. I'm really happy that the user groups were able to come to an agreement on this. I think that's just great. And I also want to say thanks to Matt for, in a short period of time, working with you folks and tooling this, putting this thing together, this contract, this agreement. And I think there's good things coming from all this. I think this is going to be really good for Watertown all the way around. But again, thanks you folks for coming together on this.
Mayor, may I address one item?
Sure.
Just through the conversation, I believe it was, I don't think the camera's working on the chamber team, so it's hard to keep track, but I believe it was Councilman Paulson made the comment along with Councilman Danforth's original. And, I try to think of a way to kind of talk about what the staff is going to do behind the scenes, but where we don't need that counsel is, I vision this as, in Watertown, you look at our, let's say, softball fields, we have youth fields, we have adult fields, we have fast pitch fields, we have, baseball fields. We have, what we've got here that we've not had to deal with is we have one rodeo arena. So what we're doing is one group wants 200-foot fences, one's 300. So what we do as a staff is, we try to convince them, like they've done, to go with 250, because we don't have three different arenas. And that's what we're going to do through this process is we go, okay, they've agreed on we met in the middle. So when we get to phase 2, and what do these, where do these chutes go? Do we move the holding pins? And I think that's what McKinsey and the groups are willing to do right now is meet with the staff, and then we meet with Matt, just basically say, do you feel this changes the original agreement in any intent? And if Matt felt it would, then I definitely think we need to go back to the governing body to amend that agreement. So I don't see this as a green flag for McKinsey to use an opportunity to do improvements that weren't agreed upon, whether that's park board meeting or tonight's promise. I think that's the way this will look. There's a lot of staff, a lot of Amanda, Matt, Heath. I'm working with those user groups to make sure we get the right facility because we only have one. I don't see us putting up additional rodeo arenas to accommodate every need of every group. So that is how I see it playing out here in the next 5 years of this agreement. So thank you.
And Councilman Shetty, I don't want to get in front of you, but I want to alert the council to something. This isn't quite as crazy as it might sound. The user groups have already been putting money into the rodeo arena for years, as has the Watertown Community Foundation has donated money for improvements to the rodeo grounds for many years. This has been work that has been going on already. This is just a different person now. So this isn't, the people who care about rodeo and care about the grounds have been taking care of it. And I would go back to possibly what Councilman Tupper said. Maybe the city of Watertown should have been paying more attention to this. But the user groups, and now, and the foundation, and Mackenzie Blaze are paying more attention to it than what we are. And I don't hesitate to say they care about it more than what we do. And they have been doing a good job. So this isn't anything terribly innovative. This is just a different person who is also stepping in. So, Councilman Shetty.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, actually, Mr. Kelly clarified what my concern was. So we've got phase 1, but we actually have a 5-year plan here, as stated here. But the tentative items that aren't for sure, those get clarified in year 2, year 3, and you work with the staff. That was the clarification I guess I was looking for. So Mr. Kelly answered that. But then also I appreciate you, Mr. Blaze, and all who's involved to what you guys are doing to improve the grounds there. So greatly appreciated.
Councilman Villauer?
Actually, Director Kelly, the question I was going to ask, you've already expounded or gave an answer, so I'm good with that. And I guess I just want to say, for your sake, Mackenzie, it's one of those cases where no good deed goes unpunished, the way it sounds from our conversation up here. So bless you for what you're doing for this operation out there, and look forward to working going forward.
Wanted to say thank you again to all the user groups for coming forward with this compromise. Any further comments from the council? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the agreement. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Moving to item G, an approval of pasture lease agreement with Adam Ronke. We'll go to our city attorney, Matt Roby, for more information.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a proposed lease of some property the city owns north of Watertown up in the potential Mahoney Creek Dam affected area that we acquired some years ago. It had historically been leased out to Brad and Rita Wilson, and we did do an RFP last fall to find a new lessee, and there was no responses to that RFP. Then Mr. Ronke approached us recently and offered to lease the property as pasture land, and he offered to pay $578.50 per year, which ended up being about $6 more per acre than we were previously getting. And so the notice of intent was approved, the resolution of intent, the notice was published. The resolution was approved at the last meeting, the notice was published, and this is the lease here for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Chair will open up public hearing. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this item? Seeing nobody come forward, I'll close the public hearing, open it up for council action to approve the agreement. Made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Bueller. Any questions or comments on this, council? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the agreement. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item H is a second reading of Ordinance 22-16, an ordinance regulating outdoor smoking shelters. Wanted to let the council know that we are going to go back to our city attorney, Matt Roby, for a little bit more explanation, but we are not going to necessarily press for action tonight. We want to make sure that we do this right. We're in no big hurry to get it done. So, City Attorney Roby.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the second reading of this proposed outdoor smoking shelter ordinance. And just for clarity, technically, action wouldn't need, any final action legally couldn't happen until the next meeting because of the substantial changes that have been proposed here. And so what I've done is incorporated some of the comments that I took away from the last meeting, and I can go through them or just speak generally, but a couple of the main additions here are the creation of a permit process that would run through the community development department. There's some leeway in the ordinance where it would be something that we could administratively develop. I assume the building official would come up with some sort of a process that would be ancillary to the traditional building permit process. And then there'd be a modification process if somebody wanted to, they had a permitted structure of some sort and they wanted to modify it in some way. And then I did add in this idea of progressive punishment, where a first offense within a given 2-year period would be subject to our traditional penalty provision, up to $200, 30 days in jail, or both. And then an additional offense within that 2-year period, any additional offenses would then be subject to $500, up to a $500 penalty, 30 days in prison, or both. And then in addition, as we discussed last time with alcoholic beverage licensing, there's some nuance there where in between renewals, the city has no authority to revoke a license, but can recommend to the department that revocation occur. And so there's language in here that says we may recommend to the department that they consider revocation if there's been, multiple offenses of this ordinance. And then the last, provision talks about at renewal, where we can take into consideration multiple violations at the renewal, which incidentally is currently true anyway. That every time an application is renewed, the council can pass judgment on the applicant and the location. So technically that's already true, but that kind of makes it explicit in the ordinance. Another, maybe the final real substantive addition here is the prohibition on video lottery machines that was added in this proposal that could be in these outdoor smoking shelters, and the prohibition on the service of food and alcoholic beverages in the shelter. I think I'll leave it there for my initial explanation and be open to any questions.
Thank you very much. I would like to open it up for a public hearing. If there's anyone here who would like to speak about this proposed ordinance, please come forward now. Yes. Yep, go ahead. Just reintroduce yourself, please.
By mistake before. But like I said, the state law says no smoking, so I don't see why we're having an issue on this. And no outdoors, nothing. You're not supposed to smoke any place in South Dakota, in public areas and buildings.
City Attorney Roby, would you like to handle that one?
Certainly I can try. So I think what the city is desiring to try to accomplish here, a couple other communities have done this, where there's a little bit of, I guess I'd call it just vagueness in state law about what is enclosed. Really, that's what it comes down to, what's enclosed and what's not. And so what we're trying to do is provide clarity to the operators that want to have some sort of semi-enclosed structure to shield people from the elements, et cetera, that is also consistent with state law. So we can't subsume state law. We can't do anything contrary to state law. We're trying to come up with something consistent with state law that has a more concrete, a percentage is what we're looking at here. Something concrete the operators can point to know whether or not something's enclosed or not.
It shouldn't be an issue. Back in 2010, as voted by the state of South Dakota people, there's no voting in public areas. So why is there an issue on this?
Excuse me, ma'am?
Yes.
I would ask you to keep a level voice. And
I am.
Okay. We will leave it open. You can comment. I will only allow you to ask questions if you first go through the chair. This is not a debate that you're getting into with our city attorney.
I'm just asking, why is there even an issue then?
I believe our city attorney tried to explain that, but Matt, go ahead again.
I understand what he is saying, but I'm also saying the people of South Dakota voted back in 2010, no smoking in a public area or building in South Dakota. So that's how it was voted. So I don't know why everybody's making an issue of all this all the time. And I run a casino, so I understand exactly what you're saying.
I guess I could give, it might be easier to, so you probably know exactly what the issue is, but.
I do.
But I could show, just for example, you could say like a 3-sided building, is that enclosed, is it not? So that's the gray area that's trying to be cleared up, I guess.
My opinion is that no smoking should be no gray area anywhere. Should just be no smoking.
Thank you for your time. The question is I'm not saying you're wrong, but there are people who have a difference of opinion, and that it has never been settled at a statewide level, so we're just trying to settle it at a Watertown level now. And that's all we're trying to do, is trying to interpret the state law.
Well,
So,
that's the state. I mean, go back and look at the voting. Thank you.
Anybody else would like to testify on this?
Counselors, Mitchell Kane on behalf of Doc's Bar, and I believe just the general public in and of itself. The law that she was referencing was Referred Law 12, which was passed by a 64% vote, which prohibited smoking in enclosed areas. But in reality, what that created was, the policy behind the statute was to protect non-smokers from secondhand smoke or any of the related issues therefrom. So, when the statute was passed and then implemented, individuals that smoked simply stepped outside of the structure, and you'd have often 5, 10, 15 people smoking outside a bar at any given time. Patrons that don't smoke are then forced to walk through essentially a cloud of haze before they can enter the facility. And I've been working, full disclosure, with Matt Roby on this ordinance and the proposal, and it was actually proposed as an ordinance the year following the statute was passed. And it actually included a much less, I would say, strict wording of the ordinance, which was approved by both our then acting state's attorney, Don Elsher, who was a presiding circuit court judge at this time, and the attorney general's office. And, I will say with all due regard that The ordinance currently proposed is very well drafted. It covers many of the issues that are currently present, but one of the things that is a main point of contention for most of the establishments in the city of Watertown is the exclusion of windows, doors, or components or accessories which may be open or closed. And I believe that that is such a main issue because this ordinance would be perfectly drafted for a city in Florida, a city in Texas. But as we are all aware, in the city of Watertown, we often have temps of 40 below, and that spans for 5 to 6 months. So there's no attorney in the city of Watertown, I would hope, that would advise a client to construct one of these outdoor smoking shelters as it's currently worded, based on the attractive nuisance doctrine. And basically how that reads is if you create an attractive nuisance for someone that may be inebriated or perhaps a homeless individual, if that person were to walk into one of these outdoor smoking shelters, and, you know, obviously it's probably assumed that many of these establishments would run heaters out there for the, you know, the duration that the establishment is open. But at 2:30, they're not going to continue to heat the outside world when it's 40 below. So they're going to shut their heaters off. If an individual is in one of these outdoor smoking shelters and falls asleep and no one checks on them, no one does anything, or even if someone comes and takes shelter and then, you know, God forbid, subsequently passes, they're going to be facing a significant lawsuit based on the attractive nuisance doctrine. The ordinance presented is a policy argument. I mean, it's created to do what referred law 12 was intended, and that was to essentially separate or protect non-smokers. By allowing outdoor smoking shelters with less rigorous requirements, that's actually accomplished. You're allowing establishments to build a structure which says, okay, you individuals that prefer to smoke, you can come into this facility. I agree that there shouldn't be, you know, alcohol or any food or beverage served in those outdoor smoking shelters, but may be consumed. But it allows those individuals to separate themselves and, you know, enjoy, you know, unfortunately or maybe fortunately, a nicotine product or whatever they're using, aside from the general public that prefers not to use it. If we don't alter the current ordinance and how it's worded, like I said, you're not going to be able to necessarily convince any of these establishments to construct one. I mean, there's many things that Matt and I discussed architecturally that could be done. But at the end of the day, it's still Watertown, South Dakota. If there's not a way to close the structure and to, you know, prevent others from entering after hours, you're going to cause concern for the establishment. So our point of contention, again, throughout the whole ordinance, I would say that I'd agree with 99% of it, aside from the redefining of enclosed and 2.0302B, which excludes these windows, doors, screens, things of that nature. I believe that the ordinance could easily be worded or address the counselor, you know, your guys' concerns or the police department's concerns of whether or not these places are actually open. And I believe that that could simply be that these components, which may be open or closed, have to be open while the business is in use. And again, if there's a window shut, if there's a door closed, a police officer would then at that point be able to step in and enforce the law pursuant to this ordinance and the state statutes. Again, the whole idea behind this ordinance is policy based, which all statutes, ordinances, precedents, any case law is based off of policy. It's to create an area for those of us that don't smoke to stay away from those that do smoke, and to create an area for individuals that do smoke that, they don't have to step outside into the 40 below temps to have a cigarette. And at the same time, when I enter the establishment, don't have to walk through 12 individuals creating a cloud of smoke and obtaining the secondhand smoke that referred law 12 was intended to prevent. As for the discussion, I wasn't here at the first reading. I believe there was some discussion on whether or not the ordinance should include managers and employees. I would highly recommend that language not be included, and for two reasons. One, if the ordinance stays worded as is, The state statute only requires that a $25 petty offense be administered. If I am a patron, that is what I'm risking. If it's 40 below and I have a e-cig or these new vapes or whatever, what have you, I'm more likely to risk that $25 to stay inside the establishment than go outside and freeze. Whereas the managers and these employees may not even notice that this individual is doing it on the outskirts of the bar or in certain other areas, but yet that patron is subjecting the manager and the employee to this increased fine. I understand the punishment, I understand the policy and the reasons why, and I believe that they are good intentions, but including an employee or a manager into this is difficult for me to wrap my mind around, I guess I would say, because in no way does this ordinance affect the patron. So under its current structure, I mean, obviously the statute's been in place for over a decade, and we've been having, whether or not we've been having problems thus far is debatable, but by increasing or by including managers' employees, you're only broadening the fines and issues associated with the business, and you're not affecting the patron. I mean, I think it's very well established and agreed by all of us that finding reliable work is difficult. And to now impose an increased fine on an employee or a manager that would have to then subject themselves to a $500 ticket potentially anytime pulls out a vape and smokes it is going to be very difficult, mainly based off of those managers' income and things like that. So I believe that overall the ordinance is doing its job. It's trying to encapture the policy behind Referred Law 12. We're trying to create areas and a safe harbor for essentially those that want to smoke and those that don't want to smoke, and to prevent the effects of secondhand smoke. But the way that it's currently proposed to exclude any accessory which may be open and closed, again, I will tell you that personally I would not advise anyone to construct a facility that would incorporate this language, mainly because if anyone were to be allowed to get in, and obviously that would, you couldn't have a door, or essentially you could have a door if you had perforated walls or what have you, but then again, that becomes an issue for the building official to decide what 75% is. But if someone were to be able to access that facility and the heater to be subsequently shut off past 2 o'clock, which everyone would, those establishment owners are subjecting themselves to significant liability. So it would be my proposal or my suggestion to the council that they keep the ordinance as drafted, but simply remove the enclosed description, or the redefining of enclosed, and to allow it to be reworded again as an ordinance. Ordinance 1114 from 2011 was proposed and agreed to by, again, the then acting state's attorney and the attorney general's office. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read what was essentially drawn from pursuant to the new statute. And it simply says, consistent with the intent of Referred Law 12, which received 64.37% votes in support of its passage in the 2010 general election, if being newly constructed, construct such shelter with not more than 75% of the aggregate wall area enclosed while the associated business use is operating. If remodeling an existing structure, the owner or occupant shall exercise its best efforts to comply with the 75% rule. In no way does it refer to these windows or screens or doors. And I believe, as Matt Roby kind of hinted at, there are other communities in this state which have implemented ordinances very similar to this, such as Aberdeen and I believe a few others. And it works well. It achieves the policy of Referred Law 12, and it achieves many of the concerns that our police department deals with probably on a daily basis.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this one? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. I will ask council to start off with questions. I want clarification first. So if you have questions first, actually we don't need a motion because of the substantive changes. But I want the council to focus on questions, and then we can move on to comments after that. So questions first. Councilman Tupper.
The gentleman that was just up there, I got a question for you as far as, so your biggest concern is disallowing windows, doors. So in other words, in I can see where you're coming from there, because I've actually visited a couple of those places in Aberdeen that have windows all the way around them. And the windows were always open, even in the dead of winter. What's going to, I mean, it'd have to be constructed where a customer couldn't close the window. Because if you're standing in front of a window, it's 40 below, and it could be open or closed, guess what you're going to do? You're going to close it, correct?
Correct. And I've actually had a discussion with my client regarding that similar issue that you just raised. And simply what we have discussed would be placing locks on essentially all of the windows or whatever. We haven't necessarily decided what the, his structure, what the building would actually look like itself. Obviously, I'm sure you guys are probably aware he has a current one. But then simply to have it be where an employee, when they open for the day, simply goes and opens all the windows, places the locks on the windows, or whether it be a door, what have you, so that no customer can interfere with the actual open or closed window.
So then at 2 o'clock or whatever closing time is, whatever day, and then they would close them. So
correct.
So then we're gonna, and I'm just gonna say it, and so we're gonna lay that liability on you or your employees to open and close that, and you're fine with that part of it.
Correct, because that would then place the liability on the owner.
Yep.
Yep.
And I do understand your point about leaving it open, as far as somebody getting in or whatever, and the chance of somebody freezing, but that could happen inside. Well, I guess they wouldn't freeze inside, but you got to check your bar every night to make sure nobody's in the actual facility, so you would do that with the smoking room also.
Correct, but if it were left open, anyone could come at 3 a.m. or when no one's at the establishment, and then, of course, fall asleep or whatever when no one's there.
Councilman Villauer.
I'm not sure who to address this question to. I feel like I've been on the council for 7 years now, and I feel like I probably must be living under a rock, because I've had one incident brought to my attention 2 or 3 years ago, and that's it. I mean, how prevalent is the problem? 2 weeks ago, I didn't say a word in this whole discussion, because it kind of took me aback, because how prevalent is this problem? So I guess I'll ask the question, whether it's bar owners or business owners or attorney, my colleagues up here in the council, because to me this looks like a solution looking for a problem that we're trying to address here. So if someone wants to address my question, I'd love to hear it.
I could take a stab if you'd like. I mean, I think, off the top of my head, I think there's probably 5 or so that I can think of places where people that they knowingly allow smoking to occur in their building in some area that's clearly in violation of state law. So I think that's one piece of it, and the other piece is there's operators in town who are not violating state law. And so I think what happens, and maybe the police department might be the best folks to address this question, but I think what happens is occasionally we get calls from the compliant folks that say, how come those guys are not complying? And then they ended up having to chase, then they do, what about so-and-so, what about so-and-so, what about so-and-so, and then they do that every couple of years, I think. And so there's been a desire to have some sort of finality where if there's going to be some sort of a structure and the bar owners want to comply, they know exactly what they have to do to comply, and then we can all go about our business. That's the gist of it. But I would invite anybody else to.
And Chief Toomey, if you want to add anything at any time.
I would echo what Matt said, and I believe that it helps to foster business in a sense in our local community, mainly because there are individuals that, whether nicotine is an addiction, and so many individuals need or want to use nicotine as they consume alcoholic beverages or wherever they might be. And what Matt had mentioned about, the compliant individuals versus those that just essentially have this structure built. By passing an ordinance which authorizes the explicit use of an outdoor smoking shelter, you're opening the door to everyone to say, if you follow these laws, and it would force those with the current structures to, of course, remodel or conform to the ordinance itself. But it follows the policy of referred law 12 in separating smokers from non-smokers. I'll defer to that all night, mainly because as an individual that has used these or been to these establishments, it's very frustrating. At one point, you know, the essentially my client's outside facility, they placed a lock on it because an issue was raised or because a question was, or someone had called in, and overnight, it went from no one standing outside the door smoking, which allowed those of us that didn't want to inhale cigarette smoke as we walked into the establishment. We were then required to walk through a continuous stream of it throughout the entire night because, of course, the shelter was closed. So then you're forced to go outside.
Any further questions? Councilman Schutte.
Yeah, question would be, is it fair to say that an ordinance, however we finalize it potentially, would that level the playing field, if you will? For example, if somebody knows, well, I can smoke over at this particular facility because they don't police it themselves, they allow it. You could lose clientele from one to another just because of someone not following the law. So that's why I can see, just for a level playing field for the establishment owners, this has a potential to help in that area. So I guess that's a question, if that is a valid question or a thought process in this.
I guess I mean, Matt, you can definitely answer the question, but since I have been one that has been dragged into this quite a bit, to answer that question, that is exactly what's happening. You have between 6 and 8 casinos who contact me regularly every time another casino or bar allows their patrons to knowingly smoke illegally. And it happens quite a bit, and every time it happens, they rat on each other, or they choose to break the rule themselves, because there's a lot of money in allowing people to smoke while gambling and drinking. Fair enough? Councilman Tupper actually had you beat. Sorry, Councilor Breeler.
That's basically, and Glenn, I don't know how you are living under that rock, because I've been living this nightmare for a lot of years, because it's the same thing. I get a lot of people call me or say, you know, how come that guy gets away with it and we don't? We just want to level the playing field. And basically, I think that's what we're trying to do with this ordinance, is level the playing field. If somebody wants to invest in the money for their organization, but the thing I like about this ordinance, we're not going to allow, and it's basically lottery licenses that are complaining. We're not going to allow lottery machines in the smoking shelter. We're not going to allow food or beverages to be served. Now, if somebody's got a drink and they're sitting in the bar, they can take their drink with them. I think that's pretty much open or evening up the playing field. But like I say, I think 95% of the complaints is the video lottery situation, where some people have blatantly broke the law. They don't care. It's a $25 fine right now. They can make more money they could get fined 5 times a day and make more money than that, so they don't care. And it's kind of a slap in the face to the community. So I think by drafting this, and I think maybe it needs a few tweaks, but I think Matt's did a excellent job of drafting this, and I think we work on it a little bit more and come up with a better solution, or a good solution that works for everybody.
Councilman Danforth.
Well, I got a question and then, well, a couple questions. If you have a person, to me there's a difference between allowing smoking and somebody that smokes and I'm going back to something that you said. So if I'm the bar owner or the manager and I've got somebody that's smoking and I'm fine with it, I'm in violation of this. If I've got somebody that's smoking that I go over and say, you can't smoke in here, and they continue to smoke, am I responsible for that as that owner? Or should I be saying, you got to get out of here, go back there, or get out of my business? I have an obligation to do that, I would think.
Yeah, I think that's right. So under state law, there's already the ability, all 3 of these provisions all have that petty offense associated with them, so there's not a huge deterrent factor, but there's the ability to cite owners, operators, employees, as well as the actual person smoking. But yes, you're right. I think under this ordinance, if we don't add additional responsibility onto the person smoking or the employees, then in this case, it'd be up to the operators to make sure that people know that smoking's not allowed and not, kick them out if they keep violating. So it's up to them to make sure they don't get in trouble, because if this gets passed, we're stating that their license could be on the line. And so it's going to be on them to make sure that people aren't smoking. If they don't choose to have like an outdoor smoke shelter, if they just have a regular bar that there's no smoking in, then they'll want to make sure people aren't smoking in.
So I do have a question, Matt. You've attached onto the agenda, or somebody attached on the agenda, the language in the state law, and I was reading through that today. But then when we get into the definitions, it specifically outlines the definition of enclosed area, but yet I don't see in here where the law says that you can't smoke in an enclosed area. It says you can't smoke in public areas. Is that correct?
The state law or our law?
Well, I'm thinking it's the state law. That's the one I clicked on.
Yeah, so it does kind of a double definitional there. So it defines enclosed area and it defines public place. And in the definition of public place, the word is enclosed area. And so then the prohibition is on smoking in a public place, and enclosed area is included under the definition of public place. Does that make sense?
Well, it confused me but I will say this, and it's the answer to the lady's question of why. Way back on this thing, and Bruce, you were on the Plan Commission when we were looking at this a lot of years ago, is we sought advice or definition from the Attorney General's office on what enclosed meant. Is that correct? And we never got that. We could never get a definition of what enclosed, but yet it was allowed, or it was stated in there that it couldn't be in an enclosed area. That's kind of how we got to where we are today.
And I will say, just to correct something Mitch said, so the Attorney General actually punted. They never actually approved our language. They said, that's up to you guys. We're not gonna commit to yay or nay on that ordinance you're thinking about doing. But.
Councilman Paulson, did you have anything?
Are we still just doing questions?
No, you can open it up.
Well, and this goes kind of to Councilman Danforth's point is, well, personally, I don't think we should have the responsibility to even a playing field, that we're not the ones that created an uneven playing field. I think that per state law, it states that there is 34-46-14 says no person may smoke tobacco product or carry any lighted tobacco product in any public place of employment. A violation is a petty offense. To me, that we're creating an issue, just like Councilman Villauer said, that I think we're going to be more liable for as a city is if we create this and we allow structures that are enclosed, we're essentially allowing the violation of state law. And I personally think that people need to follow the state law and then also implement these progressive fines as proposed to actually enforce it, because I think that that's the issue. If we're going to even the playing field, we need to take that playing field away, because I don't think it's fair that they're risking a fine with no other. $25 is nothing to anyone, to a bar. Sorry, not to anyone. I shouldn't say it like that. And that's where I guess I sit on this issue, is that we need to follow state law, and I don't want to create an issue that allows the violation of state law.
If I could.
And Chief Toomey, if you could comment upon the enforcement part of this. I know that we have talked about it before, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you could perhaps explain to the council and to the public why some clarification is useful.
Can I make a quick comment, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Quick. With all due respect, I mean, essentially what you're saying is you're willing to modify the state law to create a higher penalty, but you're not willing to modify the state law for other purposes. I mean, we're asking to redefine enclosure in a sense, which other municipalities have done because of the vagueness, which you're stating that we're not, and you're not necessarily willing to do, but you want to create an increased fine. I mean, I guess.
And that's one of the things we're debating right now. So,
right.
We have a
Chief
fine
Toomey.
schedule, right?
Yeah. Chief Toomey.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been involved in this since the law was enacted back in 2010. And every year it's the same thing. It's not, I don't believe the state law is that vague. I think it's pretty obvious, and I think it's just been twisted to make it fit so that people can smoke in their structures. I think when you just cut a slot above your door and says it's no longer enclosed, that's twisting the spirit of the law. You're right. I forgot who said it, but we get a complaint, we follow up on it, then that owner makes another complaint, and then we have to follow up on that, and we got to follow up on that, and it's just every year it's been going on. So keep in mind that it's not only to protect the non-smokers, but it's also to protect employees that are working in these businesses. So I'm a firm believer in this ordinance, and if it's a garage door like Sparky's had, where they could just open up a wall, maybe that's something to consider. But I do believe that the bartender or the employee should be held liable too if they're allowing it to happen in their bar, because if the owner's not there, he's got plausible deniability. He said, well, I didn't know it happened, so how do we give him a citation? So it's easy to blame their employees. Be happy to answer any question.
Councilman Villauer?
Chief, I guess I would ask you kind of the same question I asked for. How many different places do you have problems with, from your perspective?
Probably 2 or 3. But it's still a violation of state law, right?
I understand that. I understand that. But okay, just a relatively small handful, though.
Most of them are complying with the law.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, just to clarify, you get 2 or 3 people, 2 or 3 locations that are, let's say, reported as being in violation, but you get more reports about those 2 or 3, or?
I think it's both the same thing. When we get a complaint, then we're first forced to do spot checks and go to every establishment. But it's mainly 2 or 3 establishments that are the heavy hitters, if you want to term it that way.
Councilman Tupper?
So, when we talk about fining both the employee and the establishment owner, that kind of falls right into place with their liquor violations, correct?
That's correct. Wherever you sit on the law, it's the law, and we're forced to enforce it. So the reason we're asking for this clarification is so that we could just put an end to having to deal with this every year.
I've dealt with it with you a long time ago. I mean, like I say, it's old news to me, and we keep kicking the can down the road long enough that we got to decide, is his easy way just to say no, like the state did? I don't know. In the meantime, the city has allowed people to build establishments and spend money outside of their actual establishment to allow it. So is that fair to them? I mean, I think that's kind of where you're coming from also, isn't it?
Right. And I guess to me, to address sort of the comparison or that analogy that you just used, I completely agree. You should fine an employee or a manager when they physically serve an alcoholic beverage to a minor. That's not what's taking place in these structures or in these establishments. These bartenders or employees are not handing the occupant a cigarette or an e-cig. And those actually are very less potent than a cigarette. They're very difficult to smell, see, what have you. So an individual that simply enters the establishment already carrying this nicotine product that then uses it, if the bartender or the manager has no idea, which why would they? It's very difficult for me to believe that some punishment should be enforced on that individual. Because again, we're going to go back to, if I as an individual am not going to risk a $500 fine or ticket to work for whatever wages I receive as a bartender, and risk that essentially being imposed upon me, especially if there's jail time included.
I'm going to clarify one thing with the liquor violation. State law reads sell, serve, or allow to consume. So not necessarily does your employee have to give them that drink if they allowed them to consume, which there again, if they're allowing them to consume a cigarette, it's no different.
Yeah, and Mayor, may I? We wouldn't, if there's reason to believe that the bartender wasn't aware, obviously, we don't have enough probable cause to make that arrest. So we would have to be able to testify in court that that person knowingly allowed that person to smoke in the bar.
Yeah, and some of the places are doing that. I mean, that's all they're doing. They're just showing it in their face, and it's the couple, 3, 4 of them, whatever, that you're talking about, so.
Any further questions or comments? Councilman Villauer.
I've got a question. I guess I'll address it to City Manager Mack or to probably our Public Works Director. I mean, if we were to pass this ordinance as it's drafted, we're now placing the responsibility for the structure, the construction, the application on our community development department. Any comments from your perspective as far as wanting to take on that role in this process?
I'll comment just a little bit and turn it over to Heath. I think the intent is that we know on the front end that these structures are compliant. And if they're going through the building process, they're going to get a building permit. The building official is going to inspect for this criteria set forth in the ordinance. They're compliant. Now, they may still have to do spot checks here or there if they get a complaint, but it's not just a free-for-all. Everybody gets to do what they want. And then when we get a complaint, we go and see if they're compliant. Taking on additional work, I mean, I think we're capable of doing that for sure, and we're talking about a small number of establishments collectively, but it is additional work. So I'll let Heath comment further.
Yeah, I actually would disagree with the manager on this statement. No, really, I was agreeing with everything she was saying. I was going to say ditto, but with exception to the additional work, they're required to pull a building permit regardless of whether it's a smoke shack or a new bar or a lawn shed or whatever it is. So with those details of this being a smoke shack, we'll call it, really the only additional detail is that the building official is going to have to know what the smoke shack rules are. The same permit's still going to be issued. He's just got different rules to check it off against, as opposed to the standard building code.
City Attorney Roby, you look like you have a comment on that.
Well, if that's done, I just wanted to comment on just one quick clarification. If
by all means,
has your question been answered? Okay. Councilman Paulson had made that comment about how we're trying to come up with we're violating state law. Really, what we're trying to do. So we're doing this in conjunction with the state's attorney, and it's something that is compliant with state law, and so it's. So again, at the end of the day, enclosure, how much is something enclosed until it's enclosed? And then so there's always going to be some room for interpretation there without this percentage that we're proposing. And so we're not encouraging violators of state law. We're trying to come up with something concrete that is in compliance with state law.
Councilman Paulson?
I guess the gentleman here that, he's making an argument that we should allow it to be enclosed, fully enclosed, with certain remedies to keep them open during the day. But I think that is a violation. And that's what I was referring to is if we do go with that, and I respect 100% what you said, I'm not discounting what you're saying and what your argument is. I'm saying that if we do go that route and we do allow it enclosed, I think we're essentially creating a state violation.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Unless you have something brand new to add.
Well, just simply for the fact that, again, the ordinance is to define enclosure. If a window's open, is a room enclosed? If a door is open, is a room enclosed? If an overhead door is open, is it enclosed? I would argue otherwise because I could freely leave or enter. That's what the ordinance is attempting to do. So if it's simply 75%, you're essentially going to have to build a 3-walled structure the way it's currently worded. Whereas what we're trying to ask or advise for is to allow for an overhead door to be open. And again, for the police department to enforce that law. If the overhead door is closed and someone's in there smoking, by all means, they're in violation of state law.
It would be in violation of state law, though, because it defines what enclosed is, and exclusive of windows and doors.
Councilman Beeler?
Thank you, Mayor. This question would be for Attorney Roby. You know, obviously, enclosed structures, we run into a situation with how we deal with this. Well, a smoke shack is designated for smoking. And you're not allowed, the spirit and intent of this law originally was to protect employees, you know, workers that have to. I mean, if a guy wants to smoke, he's going to go in there and smoke. That's what he does. My question is, what is the minimum amount of ventilation required by the state to be ventilated? That's my question. Because again, I come back to this. You got a structure, they want to come in, they want to smoke, go crazy. Go in there and smoke all you want. But you're not allowing employees out there, so they're not subject to that. It is designated as a smoke shack. So Matt, if you could help me out with that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, what you're describing, I mean, I think it makes some logical sense. Like, how come there can't just be this shed out back that people can go smoke in, and you only go in there for the purpose of smoking? But technically, there is no provision for ventilation, a ventilated room. There is a provision for a ventilated room when it comes to a cigar bar, but for the purposes of the general prohibition on smoking indoors, it just talks about this idea that you can't smoke in a public place, and public place is defined as something that's enclosed on all sides by walls. And so that's a generalization, but there is no provision for having a room that's properly ventilated. Just not in state law.
Councilman?
Follow-up question. Thank you, Mayor. So, Attorney Roby, if we said we just require some sort of ventilation, not 75%, it can be a window, a door, whatever, would we be in trouble with the state by having a designated smoke shack and protecting employees, saying you can't enter that building?
Perhaps, but the real trouble is going to be is that we have sworn officers who are obligated to enforce state law, and if they haven't been advised by the state's attorney that what these structures are doing is in compliance with state law, they're still obligated to write the tickets, and then we've done all this for no reason.
But see, again, this comes down to the state does not require a specific amount of ventilation for those structures. Do they? Again, it comes down to that. I don't think that's the case.
Well, but what they do require is no smoking in a public place, and included in the definition of public place, and I'll read it to you here again, is the word is enclosed area. An enclosed area is defined as any space between a floor and a ceiling that is enclosed, exclusive of doorways on all sides by permanent or temporary walls or windows. So there is no provision for ventilation, or just like a closed room with good ventilation.
Councilman Tupper?
Thank you.
It boils down to one thing that, like I say, I've been involved in this for quite a few different times. Boils down to one thing, is the lack of clarity from the state of South Dakota, whether it be the Attorney General or lawmakers, whatever. They never have. I've been involved in sending out letters to the Attorney General asking opinion without any response at all. So I think by trying to do this, and Matt will probably tell you, I was one of the ones that pushed him on this matter, was I think what we're trying to do is get a clear definition, because our police department doesn't have a definition to enforce the law. I mean, I don't think there is a clear definition. So what we're trying to do is come up with a clear definition of what we're going to allow, what we're not going to allow, and this is the way we're going to do it, and we're going to enforce it. Because I get tired of getting phone calls, and don't get me wrong, I mean, that's what I took the job for, but it's the same thing. How does this guy get away with it, and I can't? And we've never had a clear definition of what it is. Let's come up with a clear definition, whatever it is. And I like the way he drafted it, like I say, other than maybe a couple tweaks. And give them tools to do their job, because that's what we've lacked to do, so.
Councilman Danforth.
Thank you, Mayor. I got one question of Matt and then comment as well. Matt, on in 2.0303B, is that written correctly? It says neither food nor alcoholic beverages shall not be served.
Yeah, it's not.
Well, not's got to come out of there. doesn't it?
Councilman Verhauer alerted me to that already, that double negative there, so it's
Okay.
already been corrected.
All right.
Yeah.
I think the sad thing about this is, we have heard tonight, earlier this evening, from people that had violations of selling alcohol to minors, and there's no question in my mind that those truly are, in vast majority of cases, are incidents that just happen. They weren't intended to be in violation. It happened, and I get it. What we're typically seeing, and I have gotten a number of calls when I was previously on the council, and I've gotten them now that I'm back on the council, from people that are calling me wondering why. Same, Mayor, probably that you're getting. What's really sad is the people that are doing that are knowingly and egregiously just violating the law. And in truth, the fact of the matter is they're holding a liquor license that, even though they might be in violation of the smoking ordinance, at some point in time, the penalty is just to take the whole license away for a while. And that's why we're having to deal with what we're dealing with here, for the sake of a few business owners that are just buffing the nose at the law and creating the issue. That really is what we have. And that's really sad. And I would like to say no smoking, but if we remember, that bridge was crossed way back when, and we had this place full of people that own bars and casinos saying, no, let's not go that far. So we have tried to accommodate within the law. And I think that's what we're trying to do here, add some substance and still try to accommodate, support the businesses that we have here.
Mayor. Councilman Tupper?
I think one of the differences here that we really need to look at, and thank you, Councilman Danforth, for bringing that up, is we have some people that try to really comply with the law. And until it gets to the point where it's costing them money every day. And that's some of the casino owners. It boils down more to the casino owners than it does the bars. And when somebody else is allowing it and they see their profits drop, what are they going to do? They're going to push the limits and break the law a little bit. We need to clarify a little bit for your case as far as windows or doors. But the biggest thing, the biggest meat into this, and that's what I told City Attorney Roby. I said, if we do something, we need to put some meat in it. The biggest meat into this whole ordinance is not allowing video lottery machines in the smoking rooms. That simplifies it a lot because that's 99% of the issues. Do not allow, if they got a drink in their hand, they can walk out there and finish their drink, as long as they're not going outside to get there, because it is against the law to be outside with a cocktail, correct? Unless they're on private property. Don't serve food out there. If they walk out there, they got a hamburger in their hand, but they walk out there, you're not going to take it away from them, but don't give them service out in that facility. So that's what it boils down to. The 99% of the complaints are casino owners, and I don't blame them one bit, because we're allowing a couple of people to do it, and they can't. So whenever this guy starts doing it again and this guy's profits start dropping off, what do you expect him to do?
I would venture to say 100% of the complaints are from casino owners.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? We'll close this hearing and see it back here at the next council meeting. Thank you very much. The chair will entertain a motion to suspend the rules to take back up item B off the agenda. Item B was the renewal of a license for Ringo'S, and the owner is now here and would like to approach this subject. So, but I need a motion to suspend the rules, a second, and then admission from the council. So made by Councilman Schutte, seconded by Councilman Danforth. All those in favor of suspending the rules so we can take back up item B, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Okay, we've already heard from our finance officer, Christian Bobzine, on this. So really what we just need to know from you is, first off, recognize who you are and explain what happened and what was done to rectify the situation.
Sure. My name is Brad Maynard. I own Ringo'S Casino, and we had serving after hours 1 year ago. And I had a daytime employee working a night shift, and it was like 2:02 in the morning. They didn't serve a drink, but someone was finishing a drink. That's kind of it. It was something I just, how do I want to say it? I didn't think I had to say, hey, by the way, make sure you lock the door too and have everybody out, but I guess I should have. But I came in and spoke on this when we renewed liquor license. So.
Was anything done for the employee, or just explain the rules better?
Right. Check the time, pay attention.
All right. Thank you very much. I will close public hearing, open it up for council action for the renewal of this license. Made by Councilman Villauer, seconded by Councilman Schutte. Any questions or comments, council? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the renewal of the license. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Can I say something about the smoking thing, or is that over?
You missed your chance.
Okay. Thanks.
You can come back next time if you want to, but thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Item I is a first reading on amending the zoning map of Watertown from C3 to PUD at or adjacent to Montgomery's. For more information, we'll go to our Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a rezone for some city-owned property, and it's meant to designate a specific area for our city attorney to take up smoking. No, just kidding. That's not true. But if you recall, just recently we amended the zoning for property out in front of Montgomery's in part of a planned unit development that they have proposed for that area out within their property and in the extents of their current parking lot area. This city property is immediately east of that. I'll share a map here to Teams so it can be pulled up on the screen. The city owns this property immediately east of Montgomery's. From this line right here that I'm outlining to the east, which of course includes the drainage way that runs through there, which is a prominent function of the city property that we'd want to retain and preserve. Also within the city property, this to note is a major trunk line for our wastewater collection system that provides the conveyance of all the wastewater in the community to the wastewater treatment plant. So obviously another critical function of this property that we would need to retain and preserve. What's being proposed, though, is as part of the Montgomery's planned unit development is to utilize a portion of the city property, also as shown in some gray highlighted areas through, not necessarily on this sheet, but this one, some improvements within that property. The intent being that due to setback regulations, one of the buildings they're proposing, they want to have that cushion or that buffer and obtain this city property in order to accommodate their building plans for this PUD. That property acquisition would come at the time of second reading of this rezone, but what's before the council tonight is simply a first reading of rezoning this city property to planned unit development, and only a portion of it as shown in this exhibit right here. So the area that's got the drainage ditch would remain the city's and remain the current C3 zoning, but this strip adjacent to it is what would be rezoned to planned unit development. That would accommodate the subsequent property transfer to be plugged into the planned unit development with Montgomery's. As mentioned earlier, we would retain an easement over this land that is a very extensive easement, very limited use easement that preserves our right to have that trunk sewer line in there, our access to that trunk sewer line, our ability to maintain, replace, reconstruct that trunk sewer line would all be clearly defined in that easement later on. I did want to give the council a head up on that land transaction that's in the works because, again, that would come at the second reading of this rezone. But what's before you tonight is simply the first reading of this rezone to accommodate this portion of land to be part of the PUD for the Montgomery's planned unit development. We do have a representative for the Sinclairs. Eric Scott is here tonight. He's been working with the Sinclairs on the development of this area. And he and I and our new community development manager, Brandy Hanton, will all stand by for any questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Scott, did you want to say anything before questions? Okay. Any questions or comments from the council? Councilman Danforth.
This would be for Heath. Heath, as we look down, as it kind of comes down and then comes vertical towards Jensen, that portion of it right there, that would be behind what would be the older Sears existing building, correct?
Correct.
And is that building owned by the owners of the Montgomerys?
No, it is not. A separate owner.
So why would we take, and it's just why would we have the PUD include that portion east of that Sears building or whatever it's called?
The answer to that is that the PUD plan for that area incorporates that stretch of city land. Let me get this to freeze here in the right position. So what they're doing is they're going around the Sears property with their PUD improvements to put a pathway, a point of connectivity in. They're also hoping to incorporate a little parklet area to help clean up this drainage way and how it presents itself to the general public and the users of this commercial land. And so really that's the answer, is they hope to include some improvements in there that help accommodate the pedestrian and the access to the commercial area.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Councilman Villar.
Just a comment. I guess I have to commend Mr. Clark for being diligent in seeing this. I don't know how many different mayors he had worked through over the years, probably 4, 5, 6 even, I don't know. So I commend him for, this is going to revitalize this area compared to what it was like when in the past, empty Econo Foods building sitting there. So I'm excited about what this is going to do along 212 along there. So I commend Mr. Clark for seeing this through at this point.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor. At the time of second reading, just so that the council's assured that they can have all their questions answered at that point in time, I believe our plan is that we would have that land transaction and easement details and take action on those before we finalize this rezone at the next council meeting. So we would do it sequentially so that, again, any questions there are with the land transaction or easements can be answered before the rezone is finalized.
All right. Thank you. Moving on to item J, an approval of resolution of the plat of Compesca Dunes 4th subdivision to the municipality of Watertown. Public Works Director Heath Von Eye.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a plat that is to accommodate the recent rezone of this area. And again, I'll share my screen. Compesca Dunes 4th, if you remember, we did some recent rezoning in this area to different degrees of residential, and this is the final plat being brought forth to accommodate the lots to be developed in this subdivision. And I did want to address, other than this being a fairly routine procedure here, I did want to address one component that's been an area of concern for, I know, the past council, and I believe some members of the current council that were involved with the past council. We have the subdivision to the west of here is Gulfview Estates, and throughout the development of that subdivision, there were concerns for high groundwater conditions out in this area. That concern has continued on into some of the recent development here in Compesca Dunes, particularly the southeast corner where the storage units were recently built over the past year. And the groundwater elevation discussions have carried through to this subdivision. So if you'll note, we do have a minimum floor elevation, lowest finished floor elevation is the formal term that we use that's called out on this plat. We memorialize that on Gulfview Estates. We'd like to memorialize a minimum lowest finished floor elevation on this plat, which we've done. However, I've got concerns with this number based on some research we've done since this has been drafted. What I'd like to propose is that we carry through the same lowest finished floor elevation that we administered on Gulfview Estates, which equated to 1732 as the elevation. So about 3 feet higher is what we required Gulfview to be built to than what this number here currently shows. I'm not sure that makes practical sense, and what we're really dealing with here is a subjectivity to the ordinance that requires groundwater observations to be made, and then the lowest finished floor elevation to be set 2 feet above those groundwater observations. Well, as we all know, any given year, any given time of year, that groundwater observed elevation could vary quite a bit, particularly in this area. And I'll give it for instance, a year ago, or 2 years ago, 2019, 3 years ago, if I get my math right here, the groundwater elevation was observed at 1726 in this subdivision. As we recall, 2019 was fairly wet. Well, this year, 2022, they made a new observation and it was actually a foot higher at 1727. So rather than working through the subjectivity of any arbitrary groundwater elevation in this area, again, because of the concerns of this being a very low-lying, continually wet area, I would recommend we just administer what we did on Gulfview Estates to the west and provide a requirement of lowest finished floor to be at 1732. If the council's okay with that, we can simply have that amendment added to this plat before finalizing it for recording. With that, I'll stand by for questions.
Matt, do we need to make official action on that? Amend this?
Yeah, I'd recommend that.
Okay. With council's indulgence, if no one is going to argue that, I don't need to have a public hearing on this, so I would ask the council to make that amendment now so that we can discuss it from Heath's recommendation. So an amendment to raise the lowest floor elevation, was it?
Lowest finished floor elevation.
Lowest finished floor elevation to 1732. Okay. Motion made by Councilman Vilhauer, seconded by Councilman Tupper. Any discussion on that? Hearing not. What? Councilman Vilhauer? Okay. So this is just on the amendment. Okay. To amend the lowest finished floor.
Actually, I thought there had already been a motion. What you could do instead is include it as part of the main motion.
I can do that, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's just do a motion to approve the resolution as amended. Okay. Okay. That's the motion. All those in favor? Well, any discussion on that, Councilman Vilhauer?
I guess I want to make sure, and maybe I'm asking a question that you just got done answering, Heath, but you know, I know there's been concerns over in Gulfview Estates. There's a drainage ditch that goes through part of that area over there. This will in no way impact or cause exacerbate that problem in the existing Gulfview Estates. Is that a fair statement, or will it in fact make it better? Because that drainage ditch holds water quite a bit throughout the course of the year.
Yes. So, Mr. Mayor, one of the things we confirmed is that the finish grading for these lots is not impacted by this change, and we confirmed that they would not be. So the finished grades of the lots and the drainage channels and the drainage swales, those will all remain the same. The only thing we're doing is limiting the depth in the ground they can dig those structures into. Yeah, and the rest at the surface won't change at all.
Okay, thank you.
Any further? Councilman Tupper. Any further questions or comments? Okay, the motion is to approve the resolution as amended. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item K is an approval of a resolution on the plat of Willow Creek Village 5th Edition to the municipality of Watertown. Public Works Director Heath Von Eye, please tell us more.
Thank you, Mayor. No amendments to propose to this one, so this should be more of a conventional review. But again, this is the platting of an area that was recently rezoned as well to accommodate some additional lot development in the Willow Creek Village subdivision. This being Willow Creek Village 5th Edition. Again, for context here, we're south of Willow Creek Drive on the east side of 22nd Street. And this is the lot configuration and the right-of-way that would be platted to accommodate that development.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve this resolution. Made by Councilman Schutte, seconded by Councilman Paulson, sorry. All those in favor of approving this resolution, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item L is an approval of resolution of intent to enter into a 1-year lease agreement with Dan Sawyer. How would you pronounce? Sire? Or an affiliated entity for city-owned real property located at the Watertown Regional Airport. Our city attorney, Matt Roby, will tell us more.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the first step in the lease approval process where we have to approve a resolution of intent, and then there'll be a notice published and the actual lease will come forward. The plan is to bring that lease forward on June 6th. There is an interim step here with the airport board giving their blessing to the lease that I'm currently drafting. Little background, this is an item that you may be familiar with. I think it first surfaced a year or two ago where a gentleman wants to operate a aerial application business at the airport. And our aerial application standards in our ordinance require egg spraying. One of the requirements is a structure, a building. And currently at our airport there is no space for a building to be constructed. But if the capital improvement plan goes forward as the current plan is, there will be that space come next year. And so the council approved an ordinance amendment last year that allowed for a temporary agreement, so long as a temporary agreement for an operator that would basically be operating temporarily out of compliance with our ordinances, so long as it's only a 1-year agreement and they're going to come into compliance within that short period of time. And so as we sit today, the plan is for an ag taxiway to be constructed next year, which puts us approximately a year out from him being able to construct a building. And therefore the ordinance allows for this 1-year temporary arrangement where he'll operate from a kind of a temporary setup. And the area identified is northeast of the stone hangar at the airport is where he'll kind of set up his temporary operation. And then of course Heath here can answer any operational questions about this, and I see our interim airport managers in the audience as well. So
all right, thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the resolution. Made by Councilman Danforth. Seconded by Councilman Bueller. Any questions or comments on this? Councilman Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. I know every time we act an airport issue, the FAA is always a party to the conversation as well. No issues with the FAA by extending this? Whoever wants to address that.
Correct, Councilman Vilhauer. Matt has checked that off with our regional FAA representative, and they do not have any conflict or concerns with it because we have the plan for a permanent solution for their operations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the resolution. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item N is an approval to advertise and hire for the new position of Prairie Lakes Wellness Center Facility Manager with the Parks, Rec, and Forestry Department, grade 170. For more information, we'll go to our city manager, Amanda Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. This was discussed at our work session on May 9th. We've had a lot of discussions in the last year about the structure of the Wellness Center. This is to bring back the facility manager position, so there'd be one head of that ship, if you will. One thing that I did want to clarify coming out of the work session, the actual supplement that would be required for this is $6,050, not the $53,000 that we talked about. So if there were questions around that, the actual increase to the budget is $6,000. And I would stand by for any questions.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to approve this new position. Made by Councilman Danforth, seconded by Councilman Schutte. Any questions or comments on this, Council? The motion is to approve the new position. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carried. Item O is an approval of a bid award for the PMPC Neighborhood Street Reconstruction at 5th Avenue Northeast with J&J Earthworks. For more information, Heath Von Eye.
Thank you, Mayor. This is our pavement management program, Schedule C, that's been designed and bid. I pulled up a map here, shared to teams. The limits of this project include 5th Avenue Northeast from Highway 81 east to 6th Street Northeast. And this entire stretch of 5th Avenue, this project would be considered a reconstruct. We're removing all surfacing. We're addressing any base course and subgrade deficiencies that exist within the street section, and then building it back to meet our new engineering design standards that we've adopted. As outlined in the summary, J&J Earthworks was the low bidder at a fairly significant cost savings to the city in comparison to the engineer's estimate. And also noted in the financial impact or the financial summary is that there is a great amount of savings left in this line item. However, those savings are planned to be utilized on other project overruns such as 3rd Avenue and others throughout the CIP, the Capital Improvement Plan. So we are recommending bid award to proceed with this project this year. And Justin has been working diligently on keeping tabs of the overruns, underruns, and how everything's balancing out. Just wanted to share that information for council's knowledge as well. With that, I'll stand by for any questions. And I see Acting City Engineer Justin Peterson is in the audience with us too.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to approve this bid award. Made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Schutte. Any questions or comments on this, Council? Councilman Paulson?
Just a reminder, I have recused myself. Yep.
Councilman Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, I'm thrilled that it's that much below the engineer's estimate, but can't help but ask a question. 53%. I mean, any comments? I mean, did the bids come in that good, or did we just not have a good estimate? Or I'm not trying to point fingers at anybody, but did catch my attention.
Yeah, that's a great question. If I could ask Justin to elaborate on that, where some of the larger numbers were discrepant within the bid tabs.
Justin Peterson, city engineer. We tried to use the estimate or the numbers from previous projects. One of the projects that we utilized was actually large patches, which had somewhat higher numbers than what we saw. The other side of that is that we did get really good bids, so we estimated high, and the bids came in low. So
fair enough. Just to follow up in general, is the asphalt plant up and running by now here in town?
Last I heard, they were going to do some testing next week, and then the following week they'd open up. Okay. That's the last I heard.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments? Motion is to approve the bid award. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item P is an approval of Stein sign display to provide advertising services for the Watertown Regional Airport. Our Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye, will tell us more.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Of course, with the new airport terminal opening here this summer, we're gearing up and trying to get as many things plugged into the facility as we feel are appropriate and necessary and help benefit the operation of that facility. One of those things that we're remaining are the advertisement services within the facility. It's been planned to have a series of monitors, some TV screens throughout the new airport terminal, and the intent being that we would market advertisements on those monitors for the users of the facility to see those advertisements. So what staff did is we sought proposals from a couple different companies in town here for these services. Stein Sign provided a plan for marketing those advertisements and managing the advertisements on those monitors, and that's the contract that's before the council here tonight. We've reviewed this with the city manager and the city attorney, and airport staff and myself are comfortable with the proposals as outlined in the summary and throughout the agreement. We do have a representative from Stein Sign here tonight, and also the interim airport manager is here as well, and we'll stand by for questions.
I don't have to, but if either person from Stein Sign would like to address the council, you sure can. Otherwise, stand by for questions. All right. Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the agreement. So moved. Made by Councilman Vilhauer, seconded by Councilman Tupper. Paulson. Open it up for questions. Councilman Vilhauer.
Just want to clarify, in our agenda pack, we actually had two different agreements with two different dates on it. I believe one was the one that was presented to the airport board last week, and there were a couple of minor tweaks. So we want the one that's dated May 9th. Is that correct? Is that the one we're acting on?
Yeah, that'd be correct. The most current version there.
Okay. And the airport board did recommend unanimously approval to the council for adoption of the agreement.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Motion is to approve the agreement. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item Q is an approval of a pipeline temporary construction and access easement agreement with Summit Carbon Solutions for the Midwest Carbon Express project. Public Works Director Heath Von Eye, please tell us more.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated in the title, Summit Carbon Solutions, they're seeking an easement from the city that's pertaining to city property and the alignment of their proposed CO2 pipeline that they're working on getting final permitting through the state with. Our portion of this, or our involvement, I believe is in an exhibit here. Let me scroll to it. Our involvement relates to this piece of city property outlined on this map. This is an exhibit in the easement agreement. This is Highway 81 running north and south. You have Glacial Lakes Energy here on the south end of the map. This is a proposed portion of the alignment of that new pipeline that we would need to approve this easement in order for them to construct through our land. The easement comes in three parts. One is for the permanent presence of the pipeline. The other one is for access in perpetuity to that pipeline. The third component is a temporary construction easement. We reviewed the easement agreement with the city attorney, and we agree with all the terms in it and don't see any cause for delay or postponement of this easement. I guess as I say that, I'd maybe ask Matt, the project is still pending, but what would happen to the easement if the project did not go forward? I assume it would be null and void, or do we not need to worry about that? I apologize, I threw that in here at last minute.
I would have to double check the language. I would expect, it's been a while since I reviewed this, I would expect there to be something in there regarding a termination if the project doesn't go forward.
I know we have a representative from Summit Carbon Solutions here as well, if you needed clarification on that.
If he knew quicker than I did,
Yeah,
perhaps he
why
could
don't you come
answer.
on forward, just
Yeah.
identify yourself?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Matt Krogman, representing Carbon Solutions, Summit Carbon Solutions here. I was not privy to the agreement when it was written or anything like that, so I'm going to be no more help either. I'm sorry.
Well, Matt, you drove up from Brookings for not a lot yet. All right. I'll move on for, I can let Matt look it up if we need to, but I will open it up for a motion from the council to approve this agreement. Sure. Yes.
Not knowing if it's contingent on the project, can we build that into the motion?
Yeah, certainly. And then if it's already a part of the agreement, then
it's-
it wouldn't,
yeah,
we
then it
wouldn't need to
doesn't
do
matter,
anything.
but
But yeah,
it
you
would
certainly.
seem
Yeah.
prudent to build it in case, not knowing if it's in there or not.
Yeah.
Mayor, I'm sorry.
Make a motion to approve the agreement contingent upon finalization of the pipeline construction. Fair enough. I mean, that's pretty open-ended. though.
Generally, yeah, I think contingent on the use for this purpose, and so if this purpose doesn't go forward, then there's no easement.
Okay, so we'll go with for use for this purpose. Okay. Need a motion and a second? Motion made by Councilman Danforth, second by Councilman Tupper. Questions or comments? Councilman Vilhauer.
Just for the public's interest, as I understand it, this entire project is still subject to approval by the Public Utilities Commission. Is that a fair statement? Okay, you're nodding yes, sir. So, okay. And I'd also, in interest of full disclosure, I know this agreement is with Summit Carbon Solutions and not Glacial Lakes Energy. I am a very minor shareholder in Glacial Lakes Energy, or Glacial Lakes. That's not the right term. Glacial Lakes, whatever the there we go. Corn processors. There we go. I'm a very minor shareholder in that, so I don't feel that impacts my ability to weigh in on this, though.
I guess I need to admit I also am a very minor shareholder. So, Councilman Shetty.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and item number 11, I guess I got to find out. Oh, shoot, I just got outside my email here. Or my, let me get back in here. Sorry about that. Actually, you got the sheet right here, Councilman Vilhauer. Under item number 11, letter D, it says company may exercise all or any of its rights in this agreement at any time, and company's non-use or limited use of any such rights shall not constitute forfeiture of or otherwise limit any such rights. Didn't know if that, is that what that's referring to what we're talking about here?
I agree that probably would be applicable. You know, one of the things that was going through my mind here, I mean, if we accept payment on this easement and as is, I think that we would be obligated to the easement. Now, I don't know what use they would ever have for it. So maybe it's a conversation we'll have to have with their counsel to see if maybe we just wait to execute the agreement till we know for certain that it's moving forward. But yeah, I agree that that probably would be applicable. I don't know, and we could talk to them about any potential other uses they may see. I don't know, I doubt they're thinking about that right now. They're trying to get this thing done, so, but we can certainly pursue that and get some answers there.
Sure, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Motion is to approve this agreement with Summit Carbon Solutions. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We are on to old business. Any old business, Council? Councilman Beeler.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things. One, Director Kelly, are you still with us? I don't mean are you dead or alive. I mean, are you still on? I see your little icon on the screen.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Come in, Terry.
I was not watching the Twins game.
You was sleeping, were you? Now, quick question for you, because I'm getting this question quite a bit, and I know I've been hassling you with this one for a while, but Nelson Park, can you give us an update on where things are at with pickleball courts, the reconstruction timeline, and where we're at with all that, please?
Yep, sure can. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, please.
We have met with, right now, just 2 concrete contractors. We reached out to 4. The intent is not only Nelson, Morningside, and then the new River Ridge development. We want to put all concrete courts in. So I've met with 2 on site. Those prices are due back this Friday. Then what's going to happen on Nelson in particular, Bruce, is going to be really that dollar amount. 1, what's the budgetary factor we have with all our projects? 2, that may put a delay if that exceeds the public improvement bid threshold, which is $100,000. I did meet with City Attorney Roby on Wednesday of last week just to kind of feel it out if it's separate projects, if he feels it's like work. He was going to look into it when I got him more information, but the intent is if it's within what we have for a budget allotment, we can still do Morningside resurface and River Ridge phase 1. What we would do is we'd remove the basketball court, replace that as a separate facility or just a separate fenced-in area next to it. We would turn the footprint and create 4 courts that you would play north to south versus east to west, which would just involve the new concrete surface and internal mid fence within there, and then rework with our color coder out of the T area. So hopefully those prices all come back within budget, and then just working with Matt, if it does need to be a public bid, that will stretch the process out about 5 or 6 additional weeks just for the advertisement. And he has already made me well aware that I should wait to ask a little bit on adding to their plate, but we do have an agreement with Stockwell Engineering on River Ridge that we could probably sneak that specification in to get it out. So the plan is based on budgetary constraints. We didn't budget for a pickleball court. In 2022, we budgeted for court and park improvements. And that's just one that I know needs to be done. So I prioritized it. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it as pickleball with a new basketball court. So fire away on what I missed.
Well, just your best estimate on what the potential timeline is for Nelson Park. Now that right now, what I'm hearing is that there might be budget constraints that could cause this not to happen. At Nelson, focus on Nelson Park for right now.
Okay, Nelson Park. But I do need to point out our budget is consisted of multiple projects. So if you look at that line item, it's nothing specified to Nelson. It's park improvement and court improvements. No different than our bike trail. We budget funds. We take the worst areas and complete those first. So Nelson is in the top 3. We pushed the pickleball court back from 2022 to 2023, the actual 6 court. So then we said, if we do Nelson, let's just resurface new concrete, not asphalt, turn it the proper direction. And we are waiting on the fees. If the fees come in under the bid threshold and we can get it under the $100,000 for public improvement, and our attorney, Matt Roby, agrees with my assessment of the scope of work does not violate a like factor doing other projects within the community, the time frame would probably put based on if the contractor can get it in his queue early, mid to late July, because we've got to allow 28 days of curing before we can even color coat.
So that would be completion, or would that be people could play on it?
Yeah, that would be probably late July would be completion. Feel free to play on it. We would hope a notice to proceed would be done by about June 1. And probably a 2-week construction period for the concrete, 28-day curing, the fence work, the new standard stanchions of pickleball, backfill, getting the area seeded. And that's a very aggressive timeline, even saying into July. But if we have to go to bid, it would surely be a fall project by completion. So,
and I don't know, Terry, you're looking at you had mentioned to me one time about the potential for an asphalt surface versus concrete. Is that still a possibility? It would go to asphalt versus concrete?
It's a possibility if I get the prices back and they seem high. That's where I work with Heath and Justin to see where they feel asphalt prices are based on concrete. When we looked at the previous projects, there wasn't much difference just based on oil pricing. And obviously, long term, we've had better luck with concrete in our courts than we have with asphalt. So I mean, but it is an option. If asphalt prices come down, it's competitive to save 20-25%. Absolutely, we'll look at that. You get the best we can out of the money we have. So, but for everybody listening, 2023, I will put a request in the budget for that 6-court pickleball complex. Obviously we're not to that point, and I can't hold anybody to that answer, but it will be a request from our department. So,
thanks, Terry. Sorry to wake you up, man.
No, I hope I got everything covered from you.
Thank you.
Councilman Danforth?
Yeah, Terry, if you're kind of hanging there with it, and I know it's been brought up in previous council meetings, and I'm just not sure that I've heard an answer. The connectivity of the bike trail that goes, oh golly, it goes to the Redland Center, so it connects up to Willow Creek Drive, and it's part of the new development that goes back in there. What is the status of a plan and timing for the re-establishment of that connectivity? Because I'm getting questions because it's been on previous councils, and then I drive by there a lot and I go, it looks like there's nothing there that's planning for it. But the question is where are we at with that? And there should be some kind of a deadline as to when that's got to be put back in place, because that development, that's a big development. It needs to, this connectivity shouldn't have to wait till the development is done or they're ready to pave roads or whatever they're doing there. But what's the plan? So the area which you're speaking of is where the access road is coming off on Willow Creek. We haven't met with it. It started off the kickoff with Justin and myself. They get that permitting through City Hall, not through the Park and Rec Department. I've probably taken as many calls, and we've just been given the same consistent answer that when the hot mix plant, I know Councilman Vilhauer asked that question, but we could put, in the future, if they're going to drag out like this, I'm in full agreement. We should require some type of temporary access, feathering, or a timeline says if you can't meet it within 6 months, you got to put a temporary spot in there. But, Justin, I'm sure he's in there. Heath can probably speak quicker to what that temporary easement looks like or how that works. So, but it's planned for right away as soon as the hot mix is to be put back in, from what I've been told. Heath, or Justin, if you want to add to.
Mr. Mayor, I could help address. I did share a drawing to teams, and I actually was going to pull this up before it was even asked under old business, because I know Councilman Buehler's been waiting on this information as well. So I looked into it last week to see what the formal approved plans showed. So as with any subdivision, all the public improvements are part of the construction plans. That's what this document is. These are the approved construction plans for the subdivision. This page here shows that portion of pathway in question that has to be constructed yet. There's also, of course, a segment right adjacent to Willow Creek Drive that's been removed for the construction of the connectivity to 28th Street. Per the development agreement, the developer has 2 years to complete the public improvements, which includes all these things: the stormwater, the water, the sewer, the roads, the pathways. But that's notwithstanding the urgency, you could say, to get the pathway reconnected. So what we would do and have been doing is working with the developer to get this built back in as soon as possible. But this is the plan. I thought I'd just show that so that the council understood what that will look like after it's complete. And also just wanted to touch on the terms of the development agreement with the council, so everybody was aware of those.
Councilman Paulson?
Thank you. Speaking on behalf of the developer, there are a lot of factors that go into this, and we're not avoiding the situation. Obviously, asphalt plays into it, getting that, but getting curb and gutter in, getting that curb cut in there to make sure everything is right, to make sure everything is to grade. There's just a lot of factors that go into it. It's not as simple as just putting it back. And so getting everything right, getting the road in is also important. So I think, we are asking for patience. The asphalt plant is still not open. We've had very wet conditions. We haven't been able to work in a lot of those areas yet. We're still getting frost out of the ground still today. So, there are a lot of issues that go into this. It's not as simple as just putting it back. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you. Councilman Bueller.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have any idea of a timeline when they suspect this could be completed? Are we have any kind of a date? And I have one other question to add to that, but go ahead.
I guess I don't want to just throw out a date and not hit it. Like I said, we know that this is an issue and we want to get it addressed as fast as possible, but we also want to make sure that the other factors are taken care of as well.
So I'm looking at the drawing that we're showing right now, and do I see that where we actually enter where the road is and then go to the bike trail? Is that how that's going to work, and then the bike trail kind of veers off? So you would actually come in the way it looks on there on the road itself on the entry and then off the side of the road? Is that how that
There's
works?
an existing bike path there, so it'd tie into the existing bike path.
Okay, but does it come actually to start right off the road itself and then go?
It connects right off the northwest corner of that intersection to that existing pathway that I think is set back. There's some boulevard here, and then it ties into that existing.
Thank you, Councilman Paul. City Engineer.
Thank you. Any further old business? Any new business? Any liaison member reports? Councilman Vilhauer.
Real quick update from the airport board. Boardings for April were around 1,300, as I recall, from our airport board meeting last week. Terminal still hopefully sometime later part of July. Is that I'm looking at our acting manager back there for the new terminal, so that's coming along. And also we are in the process of interviewing for a manager out there, as I understand it. So I see our public works director is nodding his head, so coming along in that regard too.
Any other liaison member reports? As far as announcements go, I would encourage the community to come out on Friday at 4 o'clock for the Go Blue Parade. And you can join, I think, Councilman Vilhauer, City Manager Mack, and myself wear blue all this week to show our appreciation for our safety officers. Any further announcements?
I have one,
City Manager Mack.
Just be looking for information coming this week. We're coming up on just about a year of this new form of government, and while it feels like we just went through the budget process, that will be coming to us again here very soon. We'll be sending some information out about reviewing our organizational structure, as we talked about last week at the work session when we discussed the Wellness Center. So looking at it comprehensively and how you all can plug into that. Additionally, Kristen and I had an opportunity to visit with Ehlers, I believe is how you pronounce it. They are a firm that works largely with municipalities on developing financial plans. They recently worked with the city of Brookings and developed their 10-year operational plan. Some very exciting information if you understand numbers. Kristen was pretty excited about it. I thought it was great, but very helpful in helping us do our long-term planning as we've been talking about. So be looking for information on that here in the next couple of days from me.
Thank you. Any further announcements? Councilman Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. Two real quick announcements. Mayor, you had expressed some concern
here when we were discussing the CAC addition out at Lake Pelican. Got word from former council member Don Roby, who also sits on the state DOT board. Public information now, so I'm not sure anything out of school. The plan is in 2023 there will be turning lanes put in on Highway 212 at 33rd Street, because that was an intersection you specifically had referenced, Mayor. So look for that sometime next year as a plan, according to Commissioner Roby. And then also, I think Kristen should be patting herself in the back, because I think we owe it to her. For you tell us what the award was again and how many years we've gotten that running.
It's a degree of awesomeness, isn't it? Is that the official title? Well, tell us what the official title is, Kristen. Is it degree of excellence in, yeah. Yep.
And that's like, what, about 40 years in a row we've gotten that? It's a long time. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Councilman Tupper?
I know City Manager Mack kind of put this out in the public earlier, but last week when we went through our severe storms, we got to give our hats off to the all the city departments that really had to put their heads together, their hats together, their work gloves together, and their work boots together to get us through that evening and through the next morning to get utilities and all that stuff, and also hats off to the municipal utility company. I don't know if anybody got a chance to see the video that somebody shared from the 911 center at that time, but I know, yeah, I'm one of those guys that listens to a scanner, and I'll tell you what, they were busy, and they did an excellent job. So hats off to all city employees that were involved in that, all the way up to the top of the chain of command, and you guys did an excellent job, so thank you.
City Manager Mack has one more announcement in relation to the storm.
Maybe. I might get it wrong, but if you're a resident of Watertown, you can take your free trees to the landfill for free. Please do that. Take your utility bill with you.
As long as you pay garbage, is what I've been told.
So we know we've had a few citizens reach out for fallen branches, trees, things like that, and you can take them out to the dump. Public Works Director Heath Von Eye.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to make one quick announcement. I sent an email out right before the meeting, but I wanted to announce that we've selected a new community development manager for the Public Works Department to manage that division, which includes planning and zoning and building services. And that is an internal hire, and we've given a promotional opportunity to Miss Brandy Hanton, who has graciously accepted.
All right. Any further announcements? We have no need to go into executive session, so the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Vilhauer. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, the motion is to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries.